Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku and Nejire were romantic lovebirds? If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Let's go, guys. We don't need Deku anymore, the boys enthusiastically exclaimed. Yeah, and marched away, leaving a dejected green-haired boy who was drenched from head to toe in their wake. His voice was tearful as he said, "Guys, wait for me." It hit him hard because he had just been dumped by the people he had spent so much time calling his friends. Was it all due to his lack of eccentricities? Why would they harm him in this way? Was he to blame for not having a quirk from birth? It wasn't equitable. He said to himself as he stood up and started to go in a different direction. Who needs them anyways? He knew these areas of the woods like the back of his hand, so it wasn't a problem for him. He found a secret location that he usually went to by himself to be by himself with ease. It was a tiny space beside a spring that was flowing. He closed his eyes and simply lay there, allowing his thoughts to wander as the sound of the water soothed him. He went through a variety of ideas rather than really settling on one. When he heard footsteps approaching, he was startled out of his reverie and opened his eyes. From behind him, it came. He turned and saw a girl who was either his age or perhaps older. She appeared anxious and afraid. "Hello," was his greeting. When she looked around, she said, hi, are you lost too?" Izuku stood up and shook his head. He assumed that she had become disoriented and was attempting to escape the forest. When he stood beside her, she was slightly taller than him. He said, "Are you lost?" The girl replied with a nod. Izuku gave a small smile. "Don't worry. I know the way out. Follow me," said the man. It was getting a little dark already, and he ought to go home on his own. Taking his arm, the girl trailed behind him. After a short while, he said, "My name is Izuku Midoriya." The girl said, "I'm Nejire. Nejire Hado." It didn't take them long to reach the forest's edge, where the park's lights were visible. Izuku, a bright youngster, assumed that the man with the electric blue hair and the woman with the white hair were her parents based on their movements. A boy shouted, "Mom, Dad, Nejire's back," as he gestured to the two kids who emerged from the trees. The adults hurried over to check on her and make sure she was all right. Izuku was about to leave after taking this as his cue when the girl interrupted. "Sorry, I wandered too far. Luckily Izuku was there to help me. I would have been lost if it weren't for him." When his name was mentioned, the boy froze, and both parents turned to see him. Izuku had trouble interacting with people, particularly after receiving a quirkless diagnosis. He wished to stay as far away from them as possible. The man bowed slightly and said, "Thank you very much, we are grateful to you, kid." He said, losing his voice at the end, "There's no need for that, sir. I just did what a hero would do." The woman said, "A hero? Is that what you want to become?" Izuku's eyes briefly glowed with sorrow, but he soon covered it up. "Yeah. I always wanted to be a hero when I grew up, but I'm not sure I can." They both exchanged glances and had the same thought. Since he was clearly uncomfortable discussing this and it appeared that something was amiss, they chose to support him and move on. "With what you did today, I'd say you already are one. You helped a stranger in need. That's what heroes do. So don't give up, work towards it and you'll be living your dream in no time," the man replied with a slight grin. With a hint of optimism, Izuku questioned, "Really? You think I can?" "Of course you can. It's getting rather late. Do you live around here? We can take you home. We can't have you walking around this late," said the woman. Izuku said, not wanting to bother them, "I'm fine really. My house is just a few minutes away." "We insist. As thanks for helping Nejire today." "Oh okay." When Izuku eventually returned, he appeared much happier than when he had stormed off earlier that day, which alarmed Inko. Perhaps his bad mood had passed. With a, "I'm back," statement, he shut the door. His mother said, "Izuku, where have you been?" "Sorry, I was playing with some friends, and I got carried away," he said. Inko appeared happier and let out a sigh of relief that he was at least safe. Why wouldn't he be? He had recently encountered individuals who had faith in him, who thought he was capable of being a hero. That gave him the boost he required. "Hey mom. Can I learn how to fight?" Following that day, Izuku began studying martial arts and discovered that he was an extremely skilled and quick learner. He had already earned a black belt in taekwondo and karate at the age of 8. The girl he had assisted that day also became a new friend. Up until they were 9 years old, Nejire would frequently go to the park to play with him. She would not be able to see her friend again because she was moving away. Although it was depressing, nothing could be done about it. He smiled slightly and said, "I'll miss you, Nejire." Of the two, she appeared more dejected. Her first true friend was Izuku, and it was thanks to him that she learned how to make friends. She was very reserved and hardly ever spoke to children her age until she met him. He greatly aided her in becoming more sociable. She said, "Izuku, can you promise me something?" "What is it?" "When we meet again. Let's be together forever, okay?" Nejire approached him with her pinky and awaited his response. With his own pinky finger raised to hers, he declared, "It's a promise." She then gave him a hug and went off on her own. Izuku was depressed, but he refused to cry. All he needed to do to become a hero was to train hard enough. What a weird dream. Izuku lay flat for a while after waking up, reflecting on his recent dream. Today was just another day at UA, and he was now 15. He had been under house arrest for the past 3 days following an altercation with his classmate Bakugo. Much had transpired. Nearly a year ago, he met All Might and won One for All. He continued to train and became an expert in many different forms of martial arts. He wasn't thinking about that right now. Who was that? Izuku lost several years of memory due to an accident he had a few years prior. Even though he was gradually regaining it, the memories only returned in brief bursts, like this one. Iida, a classmate, shouted from outside his dorm room, "Midoriya, you'll be late for school." He hurriedly stood up, took a bath, and looked closely at himself in the mirror. He was, as they say, shredded, though there were a few scars scattered throughout his body. His already impressive physique was further enhanced by training with All Might and One for All in addition to his regular training. With the quirk, he was improving steadily and could use a good 20% if he pushed it. Although it didn't seem like much, it was extremely deadly when paired with his skill in martial arts. On the way to school, he caught up with his friend after opening the door. He bowed in front of the class and said, "I apologize for my actions. I will control myself next time." "Don't sweat it, man. It wasn't your fault." The boy jumped when Aizawa said, "Just don't do it again," from behind him. He hurried to his seat and awaited the start of class from his teacher. Aizawa cleared his throat. "Over the last 3 days that Midoriya hasn't been with us, we've been discussing about work studies, and you have yet to fully grasp the concept, so I invited some guests to better explain it to you. You guys can come in." 3 clearly senior students came into the room and confronted them. These are the highest-ranked students at UA, or the Big 3 Feet as they are popularly referred as. The tall, blonde, cartoonish adolescent interrupted right away with a joke, but the students didn't get it. After gathering himself, he introduced himself. "I'm Mirio Tagata." The girl in the center turned to their third classmate and said, "And I'm Nejire Hado. This is Tamaki Imajiki. Say hello, Imajiki." The class was frozen by the intensity in his eyes, and then he abruptly turned back to the wall and complained, "I want to go home." Class 1A's collective thought was, is this really UA's best? On the surface, they didn't appear to be much. A shy senpai, an airhead, and a poor comedian. What a lineup. The girl stopped in front of Izuku and stared, interrupting his thoughts. She appeared to have frozen. He arched an eyebrow. Did they do this as part of their act? And why had she stopped so abruptly in front of him? Up until now, she had been rather talkative with the others. He waved in front of her face and said, Is something wrong?" She said in a low voice, "Izuku? Is that really you?" The boy cocked his head in perplexity. How was he known to her, now that I think about it? He said, "Have I seen you somewhere before?" The girls became depressed. His inquiry only strengthened her suspicions. She was informed of his accident and the fact that he had lost a significant portion of his memory, but she never imagined that he would also forget about her, or their pledge. She dismissed the issue and returned to the front of the class, saying, It's nothing, never mind." They had a job to do here, even though her mood was undoubtedly lower than when she had arrived a short while earlier. Ultimately, Mirio challenged the entire class to a brawl and, ironically, kicked their asses. The third-year students were then allowed to leave after the class finally realized the value of the work studies program. Nejire waved at her 2 classmates and said, "I'll catch up with you guys. I have something to take care of." After exchanging glances, they shrugged and walked away. They didn't want to meddle in her affairs because they appeared delicate. If that first year was one of the few things that could alter Nejire's behavior, it must have been personal. Their blue-haired senpai called out to Izuku while he was with his friends. "Izuku, can I talk to you for a sec?" He nodded and promised to catch up with his classmates. On the other hand, some of them were going crazy. How was that girl known to Izuku? Why did they only use their first names? Midoriya! Cried a familiar voice in pain. In silence, Izuku followed his blue-haired senpai, wondering what she might want from him. She must have known him from somewhere based on the way she addressed him, but he didn't know who she was despite the fact that she appeared strangely familiar. When they were well away from the other pupils, she paused and turned to look at him. So, you really don't remember me, do you? Izuku shifted his bangs to cover his eyes as he gazed at her for a few seconds. He felt as though he knew her, or at least she looked familiar. To be honest, he had no idea how, where, or who she was. He apologized, saying, I'm sorry, I don't think I remember if I do know you. The girl's already depressed mood worsened, but almost instantly she smiled at him, though Izuku could tell it wasn't sincere. Sorry for taking your time. That's all I wanted. I'll see you around. Why yeah. See you around, senpai. Nejire's smile faded to a neutral one as she watched the boy leave. It wasn't completely gone, but he couldn't recall. I'll make you remember, Izuku, I promise. The first-year students had started their work studies, which were much more practical than their internships. Izuku initially encountered a small issue with his work study. He and Sir Night-Eye were not exactly on the same page, particularly because the man was biased in favor of his own pupil, Mirio. Why Night-Eye didn't seem to like him was beyond Izuku's comprehension. He never did do anything to the man. The upside was that after the internships were over, he would simply learn from him and let him alone. Since his sidekicks always took care of his problems, it appeared that the man was working on something significant. Izuku was the only person unaware of the problem since Mirio appeared to be aware of it, though he didn't seem to mind. He was only there at his senpai's invitation. Yo Midoriya. Hello. Oh, sorry, what were you saying again? His classmates stared at him strangely and gestured to the wall clock. It's lunch break, man, let's go eat before it's over. He said as he got up to follow them, I'll be right behind you. As he sat down with his tray, a lot was going through his head. After his training with One for All and the Night-Eye incident, there was the strange case of that third-year girl. Once more, what was her name? He was unable to recall. He was startled out of his daze by a slight disturbance. Everyone in his immediate vicinity was whispering to themselves, but he was unable to understand what they were saying. He was forced to look at the hand after it jabbed him in the cheek. The girl sat down beside him, beaming at him. The sudden attention he was receiving, not just from the girl but from everyone else, made him shrink almost instantly. Hey there, senpai, he said in a quiet voice. Hey Izuku. How've you been? The mention of his first name caused him to furrow his brows. He thought she mistook that for his last name the first time she did it, but now it was obvious that she knew what she was doing. I'm doing well. I guess. What about you? Nejire started talking endlessly about her day and even the days prior. Since her voice was low enough to avoid drawing attention from others, not that sitting next to a first-year student didn't already do that, Izuku didn't mind too much. She must have realized he was silent, or perhaps he was staring at her, because she halted her conversation and shyly turned away. What? Izuku took a piece of fish off his plate and said, No, I just prefer listening to people talk. I'm not really good with words. Abruptly, Nejire took his hand and devoured it. She let out a delighted squeal. It's so good. I wish I had this. What did you just do? Izuku asked, looking around in the hopes that no one would notice, but they did. Nejire leaned over with her own chopsticks and grinned. I'll return the favor. Say ah. Izuku shrank even more. This was a humiliating situation. He questioned, is this really necessary? Just open your mouth. Nejire retorted in a light-hearted manner. With a sigh, he chewed on what she had placed inside. What on earth was happening at the moment? When he sensed that some of his classmates had murderous intent, his belief that no one had seen them was blown out the window. Was he in an anime of some sort? Technically speaking, though, that wasn't the subject at hand. She leaned over him and picked up some rice, saying, Hey, you got some rice on your face. For Izuku, this was the last straw. His panic attack was uncontrollable. Ah. Another girl grabbed her friend by the back of her shirt and dragged her away, saying, I think that's enough, Nejire. You've terrorized the poor guy for long enough. Naturally, Nejire objected. Kaminari put his hand on Izuku's shoulder and said, So, mind explaining this to us, Midoriya? Yeah, 'cause it was getting kinda sweet back there, Mineta continued. He blushed and looked down, saying, Guys, I don't know, I'm just as confused as you are. After exchanging glances, they both agreed to let him off the hook for the time being. It appeared that he had no explanation for what they had just seen. But they were still envious. Conversely, Yu, let me go already, exclaimed Nejire. At last, her friend allowed her to get up. Nejire picked herself up and scowled as she turned back to her friend. So mind explaining why you're all up in that guy's personal space? Nejire retorted, he didn't mind though, did he? Of course he did, was probably too polite to tell you that he did. I get that you like him and all, but try to not get carried away. Yu. What made you think that? Yu grimaced at her friend's inquiry. Was she truly that unaware? It's as clear as day. You're not the most subtle person around, you know. Ever since you met him it's been, Izuku this, Izuku that. When Nejire realized this, his face flushed. Actually, she didn't pay much attention to the other individuals at Izuku's table, who were probably his friends. And everything was visible to them. Embarrassment caused her face to flush even more. The woman had gone totally crazy. After letting out a breath, her friend gave her a shoulder pat. Listen, I know you like the guy and all, but you might want to chill out around him, or you'll end up scaring him off, K. Meekly, Nejire nodded. K, I'll try to give him space then. When the end of lunch bell rang through the hallways, they both returned to their respective classes. Nejire did give the boy with the green hair one final look. His long, drooping hair covered his eyes as usual. That was how it had always been. She grinned to herself. In the end, he failed to meet expectations. Hey Izuku, watch this. Crackle. Whoa. That's so cool, your quirk's awesome, Nejire. Nejire's eyes were beaming with excitement as she said, I know, right? I can't wait to be a hero. I'll learn to fly. I'll be all whoosh, swoosh, FWOOSH. Izuku experienced a slight pain in his children's heart at that precise moment. She was undoubtedly pleased for his friend, but it also served as a reminder of how unlucky he was. He definitely got the short end of the stick. It didn't matter now, though, because he wouldn't let it stop him. He was motivated to move forward by Nejire's belief in him. He would emerge as a hero, in any case. He broke out of his reverie when the girl waved her hands in front of his face and said, Hey Izuku, hello. He scratched the back of his head and said, Oh, sorry, I spaced out, didn't I? Nejire pouted and sighed. Izuku should pay more attention to his friend, or she'll feel sad. Yeah, I hear you, Nejire. I'm sorry. You're forgiven. Now let's go, she exclaimed as she skipped off. To catch up to her, Izuku had to start jogging lightly. They were entering the forest where they had first met, through the trees. Nejire was used to the terrain by this point and had no trouble navigating. She exclaimed, The spring, duh. I want to see those cute little fish, and the froggies, with excitement. A harsh voice said, Oi, what are you doing here, Deku? When Izuku turned to face Bakugo and his two friends who now had a new member with Tama, his squinty eyes widened. He was replaced, huh? Izuku said, We were just walking. We aren't in your way or anything, with a hint of fear in his voice. Nejire looked at the boys with her head tilted to the side. It was clear that they were not friends, even though they appeared to know Izuku. At last, Bakugo noticed the girl clutching his hand and grinned. Huh. So the loser got himself a girlfriend, that's funny. Yeah, totally hilarious. A snicker went along with it. Izuku answered, It's not like that, Kachin. Bakugo led his followers away and yelled, I don't care anyways. She'll find out just like we did that you're a burden anyways. You'll always be a nobody, a useless, quirkless Deku. Let's go, guys. Unconsciously, Izuku released the girl's hand and took a seat on the grass. It was this. Bakugo simply drove his lone companion away. Nejire assumed she wouldn't want anything to do with him after learning about his lack of quirk. She might even become a member of Bakugo's group. The boy cried a little because it was all too much for him to handle inside. Nejire, however, was taken aback. She now understood why Izuku never talked about his quirk, why he seemed depressed when she shared a new trick she had learned using her quirk, and why he claimed he would never be a hero. He had no peculiarities. I'm sorry for lying to you all this time. I just didn't want you to hate me. Though I understand if you want nothing to do with me now, he said as he sniffled. Nejire did the only thing she could do at the time, kneeling in front of him. Give him the largest hug she could. When Izuku was feeling low, her mother would always give her a hug. Perhaps this would make her feel better. Startled, he said, What are you doing? Mom always hugs me when I'm feeling sad. Hugs make you feel better, so is Izuku feeling better now? The boy simply stayed that way after nodding. Nejire gave him a comforting smile. She patted the boy on the head and said, I don't hate Izuku, I never could. Izuku's my first friend, and I'm not leaving him over something as stupid as being quirkless. Tears welled up again, this time with relief and joy. He would no longer be by himself. Then Nejire questioned him. I heard you call that mean kid, Kachin. Why is it? It doesn't seem like you're friends. Izuku lowered his head and let out a breath. Well, he and I used to be best friends, but then he got his quirk. It was amazing, and when I found out that I was quirkless he turned on me. He started making fun of me and calling me a Deku. Actually, the day I met you, he kicked me out of his group. They said that they didn't want me following them around anymore. Nejire listened to the blonde child with sympathy and a hint of rage. She gave him a playful pinch on the cheek and said, well then stop calling him Kachin, he's a bully, not your friend. Also, why don't I get a special name? Despite his mood, Izuku laughed. After all, he was starting to feel better. I can't think of one on the spot. How about Nejire-chan? It can be our own thing, she proposed. Izuku said, oh okay then, Nejire-chan, again. She started saying it repeatedly as if she enjoyed the way it sounded. She turned to him and grinned, saying, Izuku gave me a cute name, I know, I'll use it as my hero name. Izuku asked, genuinely perplexed, really? Why? They could think of literally hundreds of better or more interesting names. Nejire, on the other hand, nodded enthusiastically and appeared happy with it. Yeah, it's special because Izuku gave it to me. Izuku was surprised, but the gesture of kindness warmed his heart. She grasped his hand once more. I don't care what other people say about being quirkless, it doesn't mean you can't try. Just know that I'm on your side, Izuku, and I'll always be. Nejire's got you. Beatst. 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 Particularly when you were in the middle of a fantastic dream. Alarms were really annoying. After just one ear piercing, you were transported back to the gray area of reality from your fluffy dreams. Izuku used the annoying noise to guide his hand as he felt around his table until he discovered the snooze button. At last, the room was quiet once more. His entire body hurt. The day before, his training had been a little too intense. Fortunately, it was Friday, so it was essentially a half day. To be honest, he was more excited about the weekend than usual. As he stared at the ceiling, he asked himself, what was that dream though? That same girl, once more. He had dreamed about her 4 times this week. That must have been telling him something, but it might just be a dream. After all, this very week he had an interesting encounter with a girl who had blue hair. Perhaps he was thinking about blue or something. I better get up before I'm late. He stood up and grabbed his towel so he could take a shower. He let out a sigh of relief as the hot water poured over his sore muscles. Even though it was probably a bad idea, it felt so good that he could doze off in the shower. Or did it? As he exited, he paused in front of the full-size mirrors in each student's room. He admitted that he had never given his reflection in the mirror much thought. Izuku's reflection revealed that he was much larger than he appeared to be in his uniform. He had a muscular yet slender body due to his years of martial arts training. His hairstyle was the one thing that remained constant. His hair had always covered his eyes since he could remember. If you looked closely, you could see them. Few people had ever seen his entire face, not that he had anything to conceal anyhow. After putting on his uniform, he took another look at his hair. Maybe he should cut it. Get a new look, perhaps? He didn't want to for some reason, he simply refused to. I like Izuku's hair the way it is. I hope he never changes it. That voice again. Who was that? He was influenced by whoever it was. For a brief moment, he had the crazy idea that he was truly living with a ghost. What a fascinating tale that would be. Knock knock, a voice called out from the door. Midoriya, are you in? We'll be late for class. With a panicked, oh, I'm coming, he hurried out the door after shoving everything he needed into his school bag. Tenya Iida, his friend and class representative, was the one knocking. Izuku had been acting strangely for the past week, and he noticed, but he didn't want to snoop around in what might be a very private matter. Sorry, I got lost in thought. The slightly taller boy pushed up his glasses and said, it's fine, Midoriya, at least we will beat sensei to the class. Shortly after they arrived at the classroom and sat down, Aizawa entered. He appeared exhausted as usual and more irate than normal. Immediately, the class's commotion subsided. They didn't want to irritate him in any way. Let's start with our main topic for today. Your work studies progress, he said, glancing around to assess each student. After clearing his throat, he went on. Seeing as you already have 2 weeks' worth of experience from this, I would like you all to write a detailed essay on your work study. As you know, I'm very thorough, and I'll be checking in with your supervising hero to check the accuracy of your essays. Mind you, this will cover a big part of your final written exam for the year. Think of it as a little gift from me. If you do well on this, you won't have to read as much when your exam rolls in. Kirishima said. Aw sweet. Thanks Mr. Aizawa. The boy was startled back into his seat by the man's red eyes. Aizawa's nosebridge was pinched. That is really all I wanted to say to you. You are free to head over to your work studies. Head straight there, and don't screw around, warned the man. Izuku quietly slung his bag over his shoulder and stood up. One more day spent with Night Eye. Fantastic. Although he appreciated the hero's hard work, he needed to relax. Although Mirio claimed that he was a fairly pleasant man, he had only observed apathy or irritation in the man thus far. He left his friends behind and made his way to Night Eye's agency. As the actual train raced away, a train of ideas passed through his head. Being by himself was soothing. Although he enjoyed his classmates, a change of scenery was welcome every now and then. Weird was undoubtedly one of the many aspects of Night Eye's agency. Izuku fell into what he could only think of as a pornographic scene. Sir Night Eye with and a bubble girl bound on a table. A feather gun. He had no idea what the hell that was. With wide eyes, he questioned, what in the name of BDSM is this? Even the normally stoic Night Eye appeared embarrassed at being caught engaging in such behavior. It was weird, really freaking weird, as anyone would think. He added that the bubble girl yelled and made an unsuccessful attempt to cover her face. After a few awkward moments of silence, Night Eye said, this isn't what it looks like. Izuku lied, saying, I wasn't thinking anything, sir. All he wanted to do was put the situation out of his mind and forget what he had just seen. Night Eye sensed that the boy was grateful he wouldn't have to explain himself and simply wanted to move on. Mirio entered the room, grabbing everyone's attention and shifting the subject. Hey Midoriya. Let's go on a patrol. Sure. Night Eye and Bubble Girl exchanged glances before unexpectedly laughing as they walked away. It was hilarious how the boys responded. Now that they were in the open street, Izuku remarked, it's nice to walk around like this. Makes me think I'm actually a hero. People waved to them, and he enjoyed the small exchanges. He simply watched how he interacted with people, and Mirio was the more talkative one. A young girl bumped into Izuku and fell just as they were turning a corner. He took care of her right away, pausing to notice the bandages covering her hands and legs. His voice was soft as he asked, what happened to you? The girl simply held him right and clung to him like a life jacket. She was trembling. Clearly, she must have suffered a horrible fate. As a man wearing a mask emerged from the alley's darkness, another voice raised its voice. Eri, you know it's not safe to run off on your own. It could lead to accidents. The same thought flashed through Mirio's and Izuku's minds, causing their eyes to widen. Overhaul. Sure you stamp each and every. Don't forget to. Are you listening? Oh. What? Where am I? I'm not surprised you spaced out again. You've been doing that often lately. Is there perhaps a reason why? With a sigh, Nejire turned to face her teacher, who had seated herself across from her. For Nejire, the professional hero Ryukyu was a big sister, a friend, and a teacher. She needed someone to talk to right now, and she could tell her anything. Well yeah, she replied, tapping her pen absently on the desk. Knowing that she would need to ask the girl for her answers, Ryukyu laughed. She enjoyed being pampered. So what exactly happened? She said something that caused the dragon hero to start coughing, but Ryukyu was expecting something like, oh, my favorite show got cancelled, or perhaps even, I forgot to read for a test. I think I'm in love. Ryukyu exclaimed. Huh? You? Love? Since when? At once? She definitely didn't anticipate this from the vivacious teenager. Nejire gasped as her face took on a redness she had never seen before. She was not joking. It's kinda embarrassing and sad. A long time ago I met this boy. I visited the park with my parents, and I wandered off too far and ended up getting lost. I was almost about to cry because it was getting dark, then I saw him. He helped me to get back to my parents, and from then we became best friends. Despite her current situation, Nejire made sure to omit the fact that Izuku lacked a quirk. She simply didn't want to mention it, even though Ryukyu wouldn't be judgmental. He was my first friend, and he was the one who made me the way I am. At first I was pretty withdrawn, and I didn't speak much, but he drew out this side of me that I never thought I had. When I was 9 I had to move away. It was sad, but I knew that wasn't the end of it. We made a promise, that when he found each other again, we'd never let go again. And I did end up meeting him at UA. It was quite a shock, she stated. Ryukyu heard the melancholy in her voice and asked, "Isn't that a good thing?" "It is, I'm glad I got to see him again, but the sad part is, he doesn't remember any of it. He had an accident and lost his memories, so I'm basically now a stranger to him," she said. Ryukyu now has the complete picture. That idea was unnecessary, even though it was a very depressing tale deserving of its own TV show. She asked the girl, "What do you plan on doing now?" "I did try to talk to him, to see if he'd remember anything, but so far all I've done is make him wary of me," Nejire said, sounding despairing. This was unlike anything Ryukyu had ever seen in a student. She wanted to maintain Nejire's brightness as a ball of sunshine. "How about, instead of trying to jog his memory, you just make him fall for you all over again? I'm not really experienced in stuff like this, but I believe that if you two are meant to be together, he'll come to feel the same way about you, regardless of whether he remembers you or not." The girl's mind seemed to flip a switch. With a sudden jolt of energy, she leapt from her chair. "That's it." Ryukyu laughed at her abrupt shift in attitude. "You're right, Ryukyu-sensei. Instead of trying to make him remember me, I'll just have to make him fall in love with me." Nejire Hado then set out on a mission, to win the affection of the boy she loved. "Hey Midoriya, you look down. Did something happen?" Not really. I'm not feeling too well, that's all." It was untrue. A few days prior, Izuku had been made to do something that made him feel awful. He recalled how scared he was of the young girl, how she was shaking and pleading for assistance, but what did he do? He gave her permission to return to Overhaul. After learning what she was going through at the hands of Overhaul, he couldn't help but feel bad, even though Sir Night-Eye had assured him that he had made the right decision at that precise moment. It was disgusting, cruel, and evil to consider, and to make matters worse, he had to keep it all a secret. Because the hero body didn't want something as significant as a raid plan to leak to the public, he and the other students involved were sworn to keep the information private. Who knew who was supporting the bad guys? Mirio was in a similar situation, feeling bad about letting the girl go and determined to do whatever it took to save her. Uraraka said, "You should go to the nurse's office." Izuku dismissed it with a shake of his head. "It's more of I'm beat up from the work studies, not that I'm actually sick," he said. "Oh, that makes sense. I haven't really done much in my work study though, but at least it's better than the internships." That was what they all agreed. They were far superior to the internships, where they essentially did nothing, even though their work studies could afford to be boring. Not as much as a patrol, at least not in certain situations. Izuku's focus was diverted from his friends when his phone began to buzz. All Might was involved. "All Might. When you have some free time, come to my office." Izuku quickly responded and returned his phone to his pocket. He most likely knew why All Might was interested in seeing him. He had been experiencing strange dreams about One for All lately. He had never seen anything like that before, when Shinso nearly eliminated him at the sports festival. He could now see those apparitions, one of which resembled All Might exactly. At first, they weren't visible. After finishing his meal, he excused himself to visit his teacher. What specifically was happening with One for All? Strange dreams were never mentioned by All Might. Why was he dreaming about them, even though he knew they were the quirk's previous users? What about All for One as well? Knock knock. "Come in." Izuku opened the door, went inside, and closed it after himself. He sat down on the other side of his instructor. "Sorry for calling you all of a sudden, young Midoriya, but what is on my mind was too pressing to ignore," the man said. Izuku dismissed the apology right away. It didn't bother him. All Might went on. "Regarding your dreams about One for All, and the past users, I believe that the quirk is evolving," said the Almighty. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Surprised, he said, "Evolving? Is that even possible with a quirk like One for All?" He did not believe that One for All was a quirk that could develop. It was too strong for him to even imagine that it would get stronger. Well, it is a quirk at the end of the day, and just like others, it in theory should evolve when pushed to a certain extent. And also remember when I said that One for All grows stronger as it's passed down. I think this is a sign, young Midoriya. "A sign?" Izuku asked again. All Might grinned slightly and nodded. "In all my years of using the quirk, I could never interact with it in any way. I always had that feeling, but this confirms it. You, young Midoriya, are the one that will complete One for All, and defeat All for One once and for all." "I've completely lost track of the number of times you said, One, and, All," Izuku chuckled. His joke caused them both to chuckle a little, but he resumed his speech in a slightly more solemn tone. "So the people, Vestiges, was corrected by All Might. Yeah, vestiges. So what do you make of it? Could it be that One for All keeps the souls of its past users in some sort of limbo? Like a soul reaper? Izuku responded. Not soul reaper young Midoriya, it's more like, their wills are passed down with the quirk, and with how strong One for All is, I'd say that over time their wills took on more and more of their personalities. Wait, I guess it is like a soul reaper then. Izuku repeated, huh, so do you think we'll be able to talk to them? Hmm. I'm not sure, but for the meantime, just put that on the side. You have your work studies to worry about, and your training with One for All. Gran Torino won't like it if you slack off, All Might said with a small shudder. Because Izuku was a much better fighter than All Might ever was, and because he came up with the concept of full cowling early in his training, he didn't feel the same fear of Gran Torino that he did. Though he might need to work on his confidence issues, he was content and thought Izuku had already surpassed him. The boy never really changed in that regard. I also heard about what happened at Night Eye's agency. It may not be pleasant, but you made the right call. You just have to work hard to save that girl. Yeah. I'll do my best. Nejire came around the corner and said, Yo Mirio, Tamaki, you ready to go? With a dejected expression, Tamaki remarked, Why yeah, but honestly I don't want to go. Yeah. Let's go. The tone of Mirio's voice surprised them both. There was a serious air about him, and his eyes were hard. He left through the door, leaving the two of them to stare at one another and wonder what could have caused the normally upbeat and cheerful Mirio to become so serious. Izuku, however, had the same attitude. No matter what Overhaul threw at him, he would save that girl today, and the bastard would be placed in his proper place. Along with him were Kirishima, Uraraka, and Tsuyu, whose heroic protectors were also participating in the raid. His seriousness confused them as well. The last time they saw him in this state was during his altercation with Bakugo, which ended badly for the blonde. Kirishima screamed, Hey, Tamaki-senpai, over here, but Sue gave her a tongue slap. Shut up. No one's supposed to know we're out here, she yelled. The redhead laughed a little and said, Oh yeah, sorry about that. With a fist out, Mirio said, Midoriya, you ready? The boy with green hair bumped his fist and said, Yeah, let's go kick ass. Izuku's speech was unusual, so there must be a problem with him. Nejire pulled Izuku aside and said, Hey Izuku, you look so serious today, anything the matter? It's nothing. I'm just feeling a bit nervous, he claimed. She pouted and gave him a forehead flick. I know when you're lying, Izuku, but I won't ask since it's something you'd rather keep to yourself. Despite her airhead appearance, Nejire wasn't a moron. Whatever was happening was most likely what Mirio was bothered by. Perhaps they were privy to information that the others weren't. She smiled, took advantage of Izuku's lie, and gave him a big, comforting hug. At first, he stiffened, but then he relaxed. What's going on? Why'd I always let her do stuff like this? Izuku didn't know why he was constantly on guard around Nejire. She was amiable and had a way with people, but whenever she was around him, it seemed like his body operated automatically. After a brief protest, he would simply let her do as she pleased. However, the hug was pleasant. Once more, Nejire did not object, so she held onto his arm until it was time to depart, but she did let him go. They had to split up because they were going to different areas of the Yakuza base. Nejire pinched his cheeks and pushed his hair up to reveal his face. You be careful now, okay? Good luck out there. She skipped off with her two juniors, letting her bangs fall back. Only Mirio and Izuku remained after Kirishima and Tamaki left on their own. Let's get going too. Boom, doors down, everyone move in. Shit. It's the heroes. Don't let them through. We can't let them get to the boss. The heroes had started the raid and ambushed the gullible Yakuza. Sir Night Eye and his sidekicks were at the front. They were leading a group of heroes to the interior of the base after eliminating the first group of thugs at the doorway. What's happening? We're being split up. Crap. Red Riot. Sun Eater. Angrily, Night Eye punched the wall. Someone's peculiarity had caused the hallway to start warping and changing shape. They were unable to proceed as the path ahead of them closed off. He turned to face Izuku, who gave him the all clear by nodding. A 35% smash for all. Izuku kicked down the wall that was preventing them from moving, allowing them to pass through. Lemillion, you go ahead of us. We'll catch up to you. Midoriya, you'll keep breaking down these damned walls, instructed Night Eye. The team followed Izuku, who was responsible for making a path for them, as Mirio nodded and ran ahead of them. They saw some League of Villains members as he broke down the third wall. Why had they come here? Just keep moving forward. If they're not getting in our way, then we ignore them. The girl is priority. Mirio had reached Overhaul and confronted him while they were moving forward. In an attempt to skewer the interfering hero in his path, the villain's quirk was on full display as he reshaped the ground and controlled the protruding spikes. Die already. Mirio leapt into the ground, phased through the spikes, and vanished before reappearing behind the villain and striking him in the liver with a devastating blow. Power. Stone spikes flew everywhere as Overhaul roared in rage after being hit with a 1-2 combo, but Mirio again dodged by phasing through the attacks. Mirio, who had stopped Overhaul as he was ready to go with the girl, was beating him up. She watched anxiously from a safe distance as the blonde hero battled to keep her safe. Overhaul yelled, "I've had enough of this fuckery," after repeatedly being struck. After recovering, one of his goons who Mirio had previously eliminated threw a gun at his boss. When Overhaul realized it, he started laughing. "Let's see what you do now, hero." Bang! The loud sound made the little girl wince, and she was well aware of what it was. After closing her eyes in terror, she felt nothing for a short while. She was threatened by a shadow, the shadow of the hero who had decided to sacrifice her life for his. "I will save you, okay? I'm not letting anything happen to you," he declared resolutely. Overhaul grinned. "You just sacrificed your quirk for her? You see, Eri? Because of you this man lost his quirk. He can't be a hero anymore, and he'll die, because of you." As the stone spikes pierced him from all sides, Mirio covered the girl and braced himself for impact. He coughed up blood and moaned in agony. "Let her go and I'll spare your life, it's that simple." Despite the pain, Mirio gave him a determined glare. "I'd rather die." "Then so be it." To crush the hero, Overhaul put his hand on the ground, but then SMASHH, Izuku, who appeared even more incensed at the sight of his senior's condition, kicked down the entire wall. Overhaul. Another one of you cockroaches, you guys don't ever go away." Izuku dodged through the spikes and closed the gap between them as another wave of spikes rushed at him. Izuku dodged Overhaul's sly attempt to grab him in midair, spun around his hand, and delivered a forceful roundhouse kick to the side of the villain's head. He skidded across the hard floor and was flung back. Izuku persisted, letting all of his anger and frustration out on Overhaul. Before using his arm to slam the dazed villain to the ground, he blitzed towards him and delivered another gut punch that knocked him to his knees. He then kneed him in the face. Mirio shouted, "Watch out, Midoriya," as Izuku swiftly eliminated the thug by dodging a quirk-destroying bullet. All of that was a diversion, though, because Overhaul's friends were able to reach him and merge into a massive, altered version of himself. "You're gonna pay for breaking my nose. I'm gonna be breaking more than your nose, Overhaul." Izuku barely avoided the villain's rush as he transformed into his new form. He arrived at a ridiculously high speed. After smashing into the wall, Overhaul repositioned himself so that his limbs were movable. The scene was a hideous sight. With a roar, the villain struck the ground with all four of his hands. Stone spikes erupted everywhere, flying in the direction of their intended target, Izuku, who managed to break through and avoid them. He was caught by one, and it grazed his side. He punched Overhaul to the opposite side of the room after blitzing behind him once more and striking him squarely in the kidneys. "You heroes are always getting in the way. Well then, if I can't have Eri, then no one does." Mirio had taken the girl in his arms and fled the dangerous area. Izuku was fighting Overhaul with the assistance of Sir Night-Eye, who had just arrived on the scene. Everything went wrong, as both Night-Eye and Izuku were harmed by Overhaul's ceaseless assault. However, Night-Eye suffered the most, being impaled in the stomach. Sir. SMASHH. A devastating hit landed squarely on Overhaul's jaw, shattering it completely and sending him flying back. Izuku's arms were now swollen, red, and broken. Due to his overuse of One for All, the Yakuza base was totally destroyed in the battle, leaving them exposed to the public. There was no backup, so it was a bad situation. Izuku was at his limit, and Mirio and Night-Eye were out of commission. Even worse, when Overhaul was hurt, he continued to regenerate. The villain reshaped the landscape and divided everyone, further destroying it. It was too late when Mirio attempted to contact Eri. With a desperate cry, he exclaimed, "Midoriya, save her." Izuku turned, his horrified eyes widening. She was going down. He dove after Overhaul after kicking her back. The issue was how he was going to escape this predicament. He had caught the girl, but now they were falling freely, and Overhaul was chasing after them. "It's over for you, hero. How do I get out of this? Come on, One for All." He abruptly stopped in midair, ending his free fall. When he realized he was hovering above the ground, his eyes grew wide. You've gotten yourself into quite a pickle there, kiddo. Izuku's shocked eyes grew wide. Wasn't that her face and hair? I've seen you before. How are you here? The woman floating beside him gave him a radiant smile. Her cape and long black hair were blowing in the wind. She was All Might's master, if he was right. Doesn't matter. It's nice to finally meet you. Ninth. Who I am doesn't matter right now. You kinda summoned me out of desperation. We'll talk again, and sooner than you think. And you might want to hold the girl tight. You're in for quite a ride. Izuku glanced at the now gone semi-transparent woman before turning back to the ground. Airy, and he had landed gently. He checked her right away to make sure she was alright, and happily she was. Other heroes who had raced to the scene to assist were holding Overhaul back. The girl asked, "Are you okay?" after noticing how badly hurt he was. Izuku gave her a comforting smile and patted her head while slightly tousling her hair. "I'm fine, Airy. Don't worry, I won't let that monster touch you again, so can you trust me?" Meekly, the girl nodded back. "Why yeah." Mirio exclaimed, "Oh man. What happened to Midoriya?" In a panic. He and Airy had vanished a few minutes earlier, and at this point they could really use the firepower. "Calm down, Mirio. He'll be here. I promise that," Night Eye said, coughing up blood. "Sir, please, don't strain yourself. You're injured." Overhaul was blasted back by a massive wave of energy after blowing away some heroes and charging at those on the ground. "Nejire-chan." The girl raised her voice and said, "Hey Lemillion, where's Izuku? Watch out." She clicked her tongue in frustration and dodged the villain's blows. "Guess I'll ask later." She turned back to the villain and sent him flying with enough force to rip off his limbs, but he quickly grew them back. Even though his regeneration was drastically slowing down, he was still very much in the fight because they were losing. He glared at the girl, who had an irritated expression on her face instead of any fear. "I used up too much energy earlier on. I only have a few more full power blasts, just have to make M count. You're quite annoying, you know. I'd hate to rip your pretty little face apart." She dodged another wave of debris that was thrown at her and said, "Too bad for you. I'm spoken for already." A tremendous gust of wind broke up their battle in the middle, pushing Overhaul back. Izuku returned to the battle as the ferocious green sparks of lightning flared up once more, but everyone's eyes widened in surprise, not just because Eri was now tied on his back, but also because he was in the air. "Izuku. You're flying," he told Nejire in a flat voice. "Leave Overhaul to me. Please get yourself to safety." There was no negotiating with him. "You're gonna fight with a kid on your back? That's the plan. You ready, Eri? I'll need your help for this, and remember, your power is not a curse." The girl's hold on him became more firm, indicating that she had decided on something. After assuring them that they would both be alright, Izuku's aura erupted, causing his hair to stand on end and his body to briefly display bright red lines. One for everyone. 100% cowling. Re-energized by seeing his target, Overhaul flew at them, but Izuku vanished, reappeared in front of him, and kicked him into the air. Everyone was blown back by the shockwave alone, and before they knew it, Izuku was running after him. Overhaul screamed in agony, "What the hell was that? Since when could you fly?" As the villain threw his arms out in attack, Izuku hurried forward, blew them off, and punched him in the stomach, sending him flying once more. Eri was with him because he was breaking his bones with every blow. The key to defeating Overhaul was her strength. After his arms recovered, he launched an assault on his opponent before he had a chance to defend himself. Izuku gave him a barrage of combos before elbowing him in the nose and shattering it once more. Overhaul let out a painful scream. What the hell? Overhaul's body was literally torn apart by Izuku's rapid barrage of punches, leaving only his torso, which was beginning to reassemble itself. This time, the villain's eyes widened in fear as he realized he had lost. Anger, fury, and the will to succeed were all visible in Izuku's green eyes. "You'll never get to harm anyone ever again. Go to hell." Izuku struck him in the face, causing him to plummet from the sky and splinter into the earth below. He was unconscious and his body was sizzling and steaming like he had just been in a frying pan. Overhaul had lost. Eri's quirk was going crazy, so Izuku landed with a lot of difficulty and fatigue. Fortunately, she calmed down and Aizawa was there to handle the situation. He removed the girl from Izuku, who soon passed out from exhaustion. It was in a void that he awoke once more. Except for the area he was standing on, it was completely dark. He was startled when a hand tapped his shoulder. The hand's owner laughed at his response. "It's you." "Yup, it's me alright. I gotta say, you really let loose back there, but you were very, very sloppy with my quirk." Flew all over the place like a fly, said the woman. She was stunning, tall, and had black hair and eyes. Where am I? Izuku inquired, surveying the area. You're in your mind. Your body is gaining more access to one for all with each passing day, and in a moment of desperation you ended up reawakening my quirk factor. You understand what I'm saying, right? Izuku said, yeah, I do, but are you actually alive? He was confused when the woman shook her head and then nodded once more. Well yeah, but no, I'm not sure how to explain it. A part of us is stored in the quirk with each user, which is what you're seeing right now, she clarified. Ah, I get it now. So who are you exactly? The woman grinned as she gently landed beside him. Nanashimura, I'm Toshinori's teacher. Izuku's expression changed to one of recognition. You're All Might's teacher. She nodded and her smile grew even wider as she described how she had met a young All Might and how, up until her death, she had given him the quirk. When she got to that part of the story, her smile had slightly faded. That's my story. Sorry it took so long to tell. Izuku said, perplexed. It's only been a few minutes though. Nana gave an explanation while shaking her head. Time moves differently here. It's probably been a few hours already. Seriously? XXX Izuku opened his eyes slowly, returned to reality, and attempted to look around. He caught a mop of periwinkle blue hair on his bedside, but his neck was heavy. Nejire was the one. Her eyes were swollen and strained, and she appeared exhausted, suggesting that she had been there for some time. Since it appeared that she was speaking to him without realizing he was awake, Izuku remained silent. He'd always wondered why she seemed to like him so much. Why did she do it? You really had me worried back then, you know. When I arrived and I didn't see you, I was scared that something happened to you. Then you came back, and leapt right at the danger again. You're always like that. We're here for you too, so can't you afford to be a little more selfish? As she talked to him, she entwined her fingers with his. She felt his fingers move, and her head shot up. Senpai. Izuku, you're awake. Seeing how exhausted she appeared, the boy remarked, you should get some rest. I'm fine. She shot back, no, I can't, not while you're still here. Please, I'm not the only one who went through stuff today. We all did. You need rest just as much as I do. With a sigh, Nejire gave in to his entreaties. You sure? He sounded exhausted, but he joked, yeah, pretty sure I'm gonna pass out anyways. Before leaving the hospital, Nejire gave him a nod and squeezed his hand. She was exhausted, but she was also relieved that Izuku was alright and worried about him. As promised, he immediately went back to sleep. I told you playing in the rain would make you sick, Nejire. The girl sniffled and said, it was fun though, I don't regret it one. ATCHOO, bit. Izuku grimaced. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really the younger one here. Hey, that's mean, Izuku. He defended himself by saying, I didn't mean it, it was a joke. Nejire chuckled while pouting and averting her gaze. Izuku's pretty grown up for his age, isn't he? As her mother entered the room, another voice responded, indeed he is. Nejire reported, hey mom, I totally passed out today. Izuku yelled, that's not something to be happy about, and pushed her back into a lying position. The woman ruffled Izuku's hair and laughed. Thank you for looking after her, Izuku. I'll be sure to treat you to something next time. Really? He asked, grinning. Yes, I promise. Nejire interrupted, I want a treat too, Mom. Of course honey, that is if you be a good girl and rest. That means you won't be able to play around for a few days. The idea made Nejire frown. For her child, the thought of not being able to play with Izuku seemed unfathomable. Boredom would literally kill her. But why? You're sick, Nejire. And it's a cold. You don't want Izuku to get a cold because of you now, do you? She let out a defeated sigh. No, I don't. Her mother turned to face Izuku, who was pushing up his bangs while laughing at the girl's expense. She gave him a smile. My, you have quite the handsome face, Izuku. Has anyone ever told you that? Izuku blushed as he answered, not really. No fair, Mom. Nejire objected. The response to her opinion made her mother laugh. She gave her daughter a sly smile. I was just saying if Izuku opened up his face a bit more he'd be very popular with girls. The idea made Nejire's face flush red with rage. No. I'm the only one who gets to see Izuku's face. No one else. Say Izuku, will you do that? Promise me you won't change your hair. I don't want you to forget about me. He said timidly, well, I guess. I never planned to change it. She grinned broadly and returned to her comfortable position. All her mother could do was laugh. to regain youth. Izuku stood in front of his bathroom mirror, reflecting on his thoughts throughout the morning. His hair. Was it a dream, or was that what he had? He didn't believe he had done all that, but it felt like he was reliving his memories. However, he continued to brush his teeth after saying, I guess I'll leave it be then. Gone this far with it anyways. He was fully cleared to resume his hero-related activities after being released from the hospital. After showering, he grabbed his uniform to change. Yo, ga. Thud. Izuku looked up at the ceiling and moaned, ow. Sorry about the scare there, Izuku, but hey, at least you didn't have a heart attack. Ms. Shimu. No. No, sweat trickled down Izuku's face, but he corrected himself. What are you doing here, Nana? The semi-transparent woman grinned contentedly. That sounds much better, doesn't it? Izuku quickly covered himself after realizing he was essentially nude. After raising an eyebrow, Nana understood why. The floating woman blushed slightly and said, I used to be a mom, Izuku. Nothing I haven't seen before, though I must say. Yours is quite impressive. Even more reason to cover up, Izuku shouted back, hastily changing into his panties. It was quite the experience to have a supposedly dead person floating around him, and since no one else could see her, he would likely give the wrong impression if he was caught talking to himself. I suggest that you get training with float as quickly as possible. He arched an eyebrow. Is that the name of your quirk? I thought it was just basically flying. With a shake of her head, Nana described the operation of her quirk. Not really. See, when I had it, it could be classified as floating, but the quirk has had time to grow lying dormant in one for all. So it's basically supercharge. Huh, Izuku concluded. Yup, you're a pretty smart kid, Izuku, though you should really get going, or you'll be late for class again. After nodding, Izuku started for the door but paused to give her a quick glance. What are you going to do in the meantime? Oh, relax, it's not like I can physically touch stuff. Plus, I'm always with you. Izuku winced at the words she used. He said, that sounded creepy. You got the message. Later, he shut his door behind him after observing the woman disappear into a cloud of smoke. With the exception of Nejire occasionally jumping him, the walk to school was fairly typical. By now, he was fairly accustomed to it and didn't really mind. He had been enjoying her company more and more lately, and the dreams he had been having were starting to become more vivid. The girl shared Nejire's name, appearance, and even personality. Then it was her. However, he thought he had overlooked something. I want you to promise me something, Izuku. What's that? I want you to promise that. He paused and raised his gaze to the heavens. Huh, how's his training been going? Honestly, I can't say he's made much progress really. That's why I asked for young Uraraka to be here. I thought that she'd be a big help. Well, she has, but it's still slower progress than I'm used to from the boy. The two men stood back and watched, and Aizawa nodded. Izuku had been practicing float for about a week, and although he was having trouble controlling it, his progress was extremely slow. Uraraka said, I think we should take a break, Deku, what do you say? I guess so. The two teenagers sat down to rest after landing gently on the ground. Izuku appeared to be lost in thought. Although the training was proceeding smoothly, he felt as though something was completely missing. The swimming example was a good one, but not quite a fit for float. Izuku let out a sigh. So you're finally going to help me out? It's been an entire week, Nana? Uraraka raised an eyebrow in his direction. He seemed to be talking to himself lately. Sorry, I was just. She chuckled as she said, I know you're talking to yourself, but you keep on. With beseeching eyes, Izuku turned to face the woman seated beside him. And Nana gave in to the pressure because she was a mother. Fine. I'll give you a clue though, and just that. Izuku waited for her to say something while grinning a little. Well, float works like how your friend explained to you, but with one for all, it's basically flying now. You'd have to work on the quirk while in motion, and not standing in a single spot. Maybe you could try training with someone who has good mobility in the air. If you do that, then the quirk is a piece of cake to control. Izuku continued to chew on that, oblivious to Nana's departure. Her words made a lot of sense. What he had been doing incorrectly all along was his training methodology. He required mobility, that is, the ability to essentially fly. Nejire was the most obvious person that sprang to mind, but wouldn't she be too busy? She was reportedly competing in the beauty pageant while Ua was getting ready for its upcoming cultural festival. In order to train his quirk, he didn't want to interfere with any plans she might have had. As they made their way back to the dorms, Uraraka said, Is something wrong? You've been lost in thought since we left the training room. He continued to look forward as he answered, Nothing really, I was just thinking back on something regarding the training. What is it? First off, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to help me out with this. It means a lot to me, but I've been thinking and I got the idea that maybe the training approach is all wrong. We've been focusing on staying balanced in one single spot. It's helped a lot, but I think I'll have to find someone who can help me with movement. The girl said, "Oh, that makes sense. Do you have anyone in mind?" Izuku gave his head a scratch. "Well, there's only one person I know who can fly, Nejire's senpai," he responded. Something about that made Uraraka react sourly. The boy was unaware that she had harbored feelings for him since their early school days, but Nejire suddenly appeared and swept him away with her. Some of the things she did with Izuku were so blatantly brazen. She kind of liked that kind of audacity. Although she and Nejire got along well, the Izuku issue was a simmering issue that would eventually blow up. "Is something wrong, Uraraka?" She walked ahead of him and said, "Ah, it's nothing, Deku. Let's head back." "Doesn't feel like it as though." XXX. "Okay, I'll just ask, and I'll be on my way. Don't get your hopes up, Izuku." After school, he had gone to see his senpai in the third-year dorms. Although All Might consented to his request for her assistance, he was genuinely uncertain about her capacity to provide it. But there's no harm in trying. The boy felt uneasy as he peered in and saw the other third-year students staring at him. A voice called, "Yo, Green, over here." A girl with pink hair gestured for him as he turned to the side. She must have been her friend because he had seen her with Nejire several times around school. He started, "Sorry for coming in like this." He took a seat after the girl patted the seat beside her. "No biggie. You were looking for Nejire, weren't you?" Izuku shyly glanced down at the attention she was giving him. If he was telling the truth, her eyes were rather frightening, he replied with a nod. She smiled slightly and said, "You don't have to be scared of me, I don't bite, you know." "Yeah. I just wasn't planning on staying. I was going to ask Senpai something and head back to my dorms actually," Izuku clarified. "Huh. Well, sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. Your name's Izuku, right?" "Why, yeah. Izuku's actually my first name. It's Izuku Midoriya." She looked at the boy after saying to herself, "Ah, first name basis already." In her perspective, he didn't seem particularly noteworthy or significant. Hold on a minute. He attempted to remove an insect that had flown into his eye. In the process, he completely exposed his face by pushing back the bangs in front of it. The girl cried inwardly, "Holy shit, he's actually hot." He covered it up as fast as she had noticed it. Having a face like that and concealing it behind his hair was a little unfortunate. If he flaunted himself a little, he would be quite popular. Izuku stood up and said, "Since she isn't here, I'll leave now." Wasn't betting on the chance that she was anyways. Yeah, she's got the beauty pageant coming up. It's her last year to try and win it. Izuku came to a halt and turned, looking surprised. She hasn't won it before. Yu Yu laughed at his response. It was quite comprehensible. Yeah, there's this girl who edges her to it, really bossy and all that. So Nejire's been pretty intense about this whole thing. Even more reason not to bother her. He waved and walked away, saying, "I'll see you around, senpai." For him, that only solidified it. He couldn't afford to share his troubles with her. She already had a lot on her plate. He told himself, "But I'm a little excited to see the beauty pageant." The following day, hey, no running in the halls. As Class 1A was taking a lunch break, they heard footsteps running down the hallway. Suyu said, "Hey, isn't that Hato-senpai?" Izuku. Fortunately, she wasn't heavy, so the boy turned just in time to balance himself and catch her weight. Nejire supported herself on his shoulder and took a few moments to catch her breath. "I'm glad I was able to find you," she said, pausing between sentences. With a raised eyebrow, the boy said, "Is something wrong?" She took his hand and led him away from his classmates, saying, "Yes, no, just come with me a sec." When they were both by themselves, they stopped. "I heard you came to see me at the dorms yesterday," she said. "Oh yeah, but you were busy, and I don't want to trouble you anyways." She tilted her head to the side and said, "Did you need something from me?" "I wanted you to help me control my flight, but I heard you've been working on other stuff, so I don't want to bother you with stuff like this," he said. She said almost instantly, "I can make time for that. It's not big deal." Izuku disagreed and shook his head. "No, you need to focus on what you've been working on. I don't want you to lose the beauty pageant because you decided to help me." Playfully, Nejire pinched his arm and pouted. I can make time for it. And also, helping Izuku is way more important than that beauty pageant. The sincerity and sweetness in her voice caused Izuku's face to flush a little more. At the moment, she had an angelic appearance. He covered his flushed face with his hand slowly. She teased, "What's wrong, Izuku? You're all red. Are you perhaps embarrassed?" He protested, "Stop messing with me, senpai." And she laughed. Yu was correct, a teasing him would undoubtedly elicit a response. Perhaps she ought to do it more frequently. "Okay, but you're not getting away from this, you hear? When the cultural festival is over, I'll help you out. Sound good?" "Why yeah. Okay senpai." She put her finger to his lips and corrected him, saying, "Just Nejire is fine, K." Izuku moved away from the girl after nodding. Fortunately, his red face was hidden by his bangs, but Nejire could see right through them. "Let's head back then." Izuku turned to face the happy girl clutching his hand and pondered once more why he consistently allowed her to do as she pleased. Did he have feelings for her? Or was it another thing? He thought to himself, "I guess, no, it can't be." Class 1A's crazy concert had kicked off the cultural festival. Despite objections from the other first years, they undoubtedly had the best event. Although Izuku was pleased with his part in his class's performance, he was most delighted to see Aries smile throughout the song. He was relieved that they were able to drive out all of the demons that plagued the girl, who had endured enough that she was unable to smile. The girl had insisted on following him around the festival, and they were currently strolling together. He was on his way to the location of the beauty pageant. He followed Mirio into a room. Izuku wanted to know why he was being pulled along with her. "Oh hey, it's Izuku, and Eri." Howled Izuku. He was getting a face full of boobies as Nejire floated before him in her pageant gown. She asked the boy who had leapt back, "Sue, how do I look?" He blushed slightly and remarked, "You look great. The dress really highlights you well." Yu drew Mirio away after he cocked his head at the exchange. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" He said, "Yeah, when did this happen?" "Really, you haven't noticed?" "A few weeks now," was Yu's stern whisper in response. Look, we should give them some alone time. The festival is a perfect opportunity. If Nejire wants to jump his bones, now's the time to do that." Mirio appeared perplexed by her word choice. "Jump his bones, what's that mean?" The girl sighed and said, "Your innocence is why I like you so much, too precious." "What? Nothing. It's nothing." Eri pulled at his sleeve and said, "Izuku, I want another candy apple." Sure thing. Let's go get one," he replied. "Bye guys. Wish me luck." Nejire waved. Izuku was grateful for Eri's miraculous intervention on the inside. He didn't believe he could cope with Nejire's direct approach today. Eri appeared to be much more talkative than she had been in recent weeks. Fortunately, she was still a young child and might be able to forget what she had experienced, but she might not. Overhaul was a complete shit. When they arrived at the stall, he bought a few extra in case she needed them later, even though it probably wasn't the healthiest option. Just in time for the pageant, or at least Nejire's turn, he and Eri returned. He stared at the angelic figure spinning in the air above them, and his eyes grew wide. Her little twinkling effect from her quirk was the cherry on top of her gorgeous appearance. It was enough when one of the judges passed out. Everyone thought she had won, and Izuku was fairly certain. The charm was undoubtedly the third time, or the last time. Once she was out of the crowd's earshot, the girl cried out, "I finally did it. I was so nervous I could die." With a little giggle, Yu continued, "Yeah, and I'll say you totally killed it out there. You had everyone's jaws on the ground." Nejire hurried off to the changing rooms, saying, "I'm just glad it's over now. There's so much I want to do tonight. It's my last festival after all." "Hiya senpai," the girl asked. "Yo Izuku, how was the pageant?" Knowing full well that the boy would react. "Yes, it did. Well, it was nice. Nejire senpai looked really pretty," he replied. "I told you to drop Thea senpai, didn't I?" The girl interrupted, emerging in a plain yet adorable dress. He said, Sorry. I forgot. Where's Eri?" "Oh, she was already tired out, so I had to take her back to rest before coming back here," Izuku clarified. Yu glanced at the two of them before speaking up. "Hey, here's an idea. Why don't you guys go around and see what the other classes have to offer? Izuku, you go with her, sound good?" "Yay, that's a great idea, right Izuku?" "Yeah, I guess. was his response, as he was unsure of what else to say at the time. He was then dragged off into the school festival, which was typical of his interactions with her. Going around was actually a lot of fun. It had been a while since he had done anything to unwind, and now he had the opportunity. Indeed, everyone did. It was all about quirks and heroism now, and many of the activities that most schools did before the quirk era were disappearing. Tonight served as a reminder that they were just teenagers, not just a group of superhuman beings. Nejire, I'm going to get ice cream, what flavor do you want? Izuku responded. After giving her decision some thought, the girl turned back to him and grinned broadly. Surprise me. Despite his confusion, Izuku nodded and walked over to the stall. He purchased chocolate mints for himself and Nejire. He had been at a loss until a memory suddenly came to him. You like chocolate mint? I hate it. Hey, it's actually good. Nejire's mother threatened him, saying, enough bickering you two, or I'll turn this car right back. That worked. Both kids instantly fell silent, though they continued to occasionally exchange sidelong glances. What's up with a name like Rocky Road anyways? Asked the man. Despite the warnings, the girl took a large bite and said, beats me, but it's my favorite flavor. Before letting out a small groan. Brain freeze. Her mother laughed and said, told you, you should be more careful with just biting into ice cream. Mom, Sir, you still here? Izuku scratched the back of his head as he blinked back into reality. I'll have Rocky Road for the other one please. Sure thing. After making the payment and receiving the 2 treats, he returned to Nejire's seat. He had to tap her shoulder to get her attention because she appeared to be deep in thought as well. He handed it to her and said, here. I hope I didn't get something you hated. When she noticed the flavor, her eyes grew wide. She looked back at him in shock because it had brought back so many memories. You hate it, don't you? And no. How did you end up picking this? She responded. Izuku rubbed his neck while gazing at the floor as though seeking a response. It just felt right, I guess. He didn't think she heard, but when he saw tears welling up in her eyes, he became alarmed. Perhaps, after all, she detested it. Somehow, he must have made a mistake. If it's the flavor, I can get you another one. No, this one's fine. Perfect actually. Rocky Road is my favorite ice cream flavor. Izuku sighed with relief as he looked down. He genuinely believed that he had made a mistake. He had no idea why, but he never wanted to see her depressed, crying, or experiencing any other emotion that wasn't her typical upbeat and cheerful demeanor. It simply didn't feel right. His hair wasn't in the way because he could feel the soft breeze on his face. It had been pushed back by Nejire. Can you stay like this? Just for tonight? He nodded and grinned, actually rearranging it in a small man bun using a rubber band he carried with him in case something went wrong. Is this better? She leaned into him and said, yeah, much better. Izuku glanced up at the sky and saw how lovely the stars were at that moment. Izuku exclaimed, whoa, check out the stars, and the constellations, with excitement. You really like stars, don't you, Izuku? Yeah, I think they're pretty cool, and they're so pretty. Nejire averted her gaze and pouted. Why don't you just marry one then? Izuku's response was deadpan. That's not possible. Yeah, well, you've never said I'm pretty. It's not fair, some stars get compliments, she said. Izuku covered his face in shame and said, okay, sorry. You're pretty, Nejire, prettier than all the stars in the night sky. Gosh, that sounded cheesy. Then, as soon as one attracted her attention, Nejire changed her mood. She was drawn to the color even though it wasn't the brightest. Like her hair, it had a hint of bluish. She pointed to it and exclaimed, hey Izuku, look. There's a star that's just like me. Instead. It does look like you. So what about it? Izuku was unable to see the girl's blush because it was nighttime. Well, remember what I said, about marrying a star. She said. Izuku said, perplexed, yeah, what about it? I guess it's okay if it was that one. He laughed and said, that's a weird thing to say. I'm not gonna marry a star, you know. Nejire grinned slightly and said, we'll see about that. Izuku, what? The moon is beautiful tonight, isn't it? Uraraka, you seem down, is anything wrong? The girl with the brown hair sighed and said, I'm not sure, Yaomomo, I'm just feeling conflicted about something. A classmate with raven hair sat down beside her, a curious expression as to what might be troubling her friend. Anything you can tell me, Uraraka remarked. It's about Deku. Curious, Momo said. Ah, Midoriya, did something happen between you two? Uraraka gave an explanation while shaking her head. It's just that lately, he's been distant from me especially. I can't help but feel like I'm losing him somehow. That must be difficult for you, but I have to ask, does this mean you finally admit that you do like him? Well, I guess. Yeah, Uraraka said. Momo took a few moments to process her friend's admission. That is relieving to hear, Uraraka. It's good that you've come to terms with your feelings, so how exactly are you losing him as you termed it? The girl with the brown hair took a few moments to gather her thoughts, or at least to formulate them in a comprehensible manner. The only word she could think of was, Hado-senpai. Momo repeated, or rather asked, Hado-senpai. It's not as though she was ignorant of the girl's topic, though. Yeah, ever since she came along, he's been different. Sure, it's a good difference, but it makes me feel sad that I couldn't bring out that change in him. And she's made so much more progress with him that I can't hope to catch up, and she's not even in our class. If she was, they'd probably be a couple by now. Deku too seems to have taken a liking to her, so how am I going to win against all that? She's a great person, and very approachable. She's bubbly, and knows how to deal with people, and she's really pretty on top of that. Along with her reputation among the student body, the odds are basically zero. Uraraka began to rant. Momo heard her friend's worries and agreed with her, and I believe you both share similar qualities. The only difference between you and Hado-senpai is approach. Approach. Yeah, approach. Midoriya may be one of the smartest students in class, but he's also a boy. Boys tend to have hints fly right over their heads, trust me, I know. Someone like Hado-senpai is not at all subtle in her approach, and with Midoriya it seems that's the best way to handle it. You have to be direct, aggressive even. That's why she has made so much progress with him. She didn't wait for him to catch on to what she wanted, she just went for it. I believe you have a chance if you should do the same. Uraraka turned to face her friend, who at that moment had a sympathetic expression, as if she understood exactly how she was feeling. Yao Momo, what did you mean you know? That's something I'd rather keep to myself, but I'll advise that you take action, or you'll come to regret it, just like I did. Later, she said as she got up and left. I do hope it's not too late for you, Uraraka, but again. I felt the exact same way, going up against you. Uraraka listened to what her friend had to say. She would need to take the initiative and be the one to approach Izuku if she hoped to win him over, but could she ever be as aggressive as Nejire? It was a difficult task to accomplish. XXX. Whoa, watch out for the poles. A crash. Izuku got up and brushed himself off, saying, ow, that's gonna leave a bruise. He had been practicing flight control with Nejire, and with the help of brief advice from Nana, who appeared periodically, he was beginning to grasp the concept. However, like most students, he overreached himself and crashed. Nejire smiled slightly as she lowered herself beside him. You got a bit carried away, didn't you? He scratched the back of his head and said, yeah, sorry about that. She took him by the arm and said, no biggie. I was going to say we take a break anyway, so let's go. Two more people, All Might and Nezu, were observing him from a distance and recording his advancement. I will admit, young Hado's methods are unusual, but so far he's made tremendous progress, said All Might. The little stoat beside him gave a nod of agreement. Yes, but I suspect that it's due to the personal relationship between them. At the principal's explanation, All Might arched an eyebrow. Nezu grinned and went on. You've never had an eye for things like relationships between people, so you didn't consider that a major factor in his progress was who he was training with. Uraraka was fine, but because they weren't as close as he is with Hado, the progress was slightly delayed. At first he struggled, but it's only been 3 days with Hado, and he's already mastered the basics of flight, and now is learning more advanced maneuvers in a limited space. Do you understand what I mean? The hidden jab made All Might snarl a little, but he understood. Hold on. You're saying they're dating? In an attempt to divert the man's thoughts, Nezu raised his hand. I never said that, I just pointed out that they're rather close. Definitely more than friends, but the possibility that they may be dating is there, but let's not jump to conclusions here. All Might let out a breath and turned to face the two holding hands as they made their way to the door. He had good reason to consider it. It was definitely out of character for him to hold hands with a girl because, from what he knew, Izuku was a fairly shy person. Returning to the two, Izuku asked as they made their way through the deserted school hallways, "Where are we going?" All of the other students had spent the day in their dorms. She said, "The rooftop. I want to get a good look of the sunset." Nejire had an idea after realizing that the doors leading to the roof were locked. "Why don't we just fly up there?" Izuku questioned. "Wait, isn't that prohibited?" "Nope, we're still training after all, this is just a more practical part." "Yeah." Her clumsy explanation didn't really convince Izuku. All she really wanted to do was sit on the roof. He didn't mind, though. "Okay, that makes sense," she said, floating off the ground. "Great. So up we go," and he followed suit. There was a huge difference between flying outside and inside a training facility. Nejire started to move away from them as he flew past the roof. "Catch me, Izuku." "Wait, I thought you said we were just heading to the roof," he screamed. Even as he was saying that, a bigger part of him wanted to pursue her, and he did. Recalling all he had learned over the past few days, he drove off after her. It was sufficient to keep him from falling too far behind, but not enough to catch her. He would shoot off into a tree, wall, or other object if he used too much power. "Race you back. Loser does whatever the winner says," she exclaimed as she hurried back to the beginning. "That's not even a fair race, Nejire," Izuku objected. She won, of course, and grinned broadly as she landed on the roof. Shortly after, Izuku pouted after landing. "You cheated," she smirked and said. "I did, but you now have to do whatever I say." "That was the deal, wasn't it?" "I guess, as long as it's not something crazy." Nejire patted the area beside her so he could sit and took a seat on the ledge. She put her head on his shoulder when he did, and they just stayed there in cozy silence. Izuku was curious as to why she was so silent, but he remained silent. Given that it was already growing dark, he was fairly certain they would not return to the training facility. "So, what do you want?" he asked abruptly. Let me think." After giving it some thought, Nejire came up with a crazy but desirable idea. With a somewhat serious expression, she turned to face Izuku. "Kiss me. She repeated. "I said kiss me. That's what I want." Izuku froze. This was not what he had anticipated. Given that she sighed and looked down, it's possible that he took too long to decide what to do. "Sorry, that came out of nowhere." "Wait, I'll do it," he replied. "What am I even saying?" he cried to himself, exclaiming. Really? You will." With a meek nod, he slowly leaned in her direction. She closed her eyes and did the same. They succeeded, even though it wasn't very long. With a flushed face, Izuku withdrew and turned away from her. Nejire leaned back into him, grinning. "You're blushing, Izuku," he said. "I could say the same for you." He was correct. She was as red as a freshly boiled lobster, even though she was trying to make fun of him. She repeated, "That was my first kiss." Izuku turned to her and asked, "Are you serious?" With a start. Nejire gave a nod. "Yeah, it is. Wow, I thought that you'd have had a boyfriend at some point, given how pretty you are." "Nope, never had one, and I'm glad my first kiss was Izuku, I wouldn't have anyone else." He turned his head away, flushed. His heart could not bear the wholesomeness of that. "Let's head back. As nice as this is, I don't want to stay out past curfew again," she said as she stood up and stepped off the building's side into the air, her quirk's shiny golden effect gently swirling around her feet like pixie dust. Izuku stood up too, drifting slowly into the air next to her. In contrast to her softly buzzing shimmers, his were erratic and green, sparking all over his body. Yeah, despite the worries about violating curfew, they returned to the dorms slowly. Izuku waved to his senpai after landing on the ground. "Goodney." Nejire had gotten close to him, hugged him tightly, and then planted a kiss on his cheek. "Good night, Izuku." As she flew away, he held his chest. He could almost feel his heart pounding out of his chest. He might not have known, but now he knew. Izuku Midoriya harbored affections for Nejire. XXX. Nejire's training had been very beneficial. He still needed to work on a few things, but his flying skills were now nearly as good as hers. It also coincided with their best of 5 battle simulation matchup with Class B. As usual, a few members were very outspoken about how much they detested Class 1A, which includes Nito Monoma. "Class B is here to crush your scummy asses." Shoto sighed and said, "Oh great. Monoma's here." Though he remained silent, Izuku felt the same way as his friend who was heterochromatic. The teams were chosen after Aizawa and Vlad King explained the regulations. Izuku, Uraraka, Mina, and Mineta made up his team. They were ascending. Monoma's team is simply outstanding. Shoto said, looks like you got the short end of the stick. Tell me about it, huh, looking down on us or you. We'll see when it's time to fight. All show. Fortunately, Kendo knocked him out, apologized briefly, and then dragged the unconscious boy away. Class B took the first victory in an exciting battle that got off to a great start. Monoma was now awake and yelling about their superiority, but she was knocked out once more, so it didn't help. The following match ended in a draw and was more of a rivalry between Momo and Kendo. Class 1A won the other two games, with Bakugo's team defeating their rivals with a flawless run. Izuku knew the opponent would try to single him out when it was finally his turn. They had an extra man with Shinso, and since he was the heavy hitter on his team, it was clear who they would prioritize. He was the opposition team's most dangerous player. Additionally, they had to make plans to avoid verbal communication. Match 5. Get started. Both sides hurried into the battle right away. Izuku had come to the conclusion that breaking up was a surefire way to lose. They would simply charge into a full-on fight, much like Bakugo's strategy. Kodai was instantly trapped by Mineta's balls because the B team was unprepared for this and caught off guard. They're just coming in like that, exclaimed Monoma, bewildered. What sort of scheme was it? It destroyed all of his preparation, and although he detested improvising, it was one of his strongest suits. Along with two other quirks from his teammates, he had stolen Shinso's brainwashing ability. Talking to him would be beneficial. Class A didn't want to take any chances with the blonde copycat because they had already taken that into account. Mineta stuck Izuku to the wall after he swiftly knocked out another opposition member with a devastating combo. Monoma clenched his jaw. They were being removed with ease. They had already lost two people in a matter of minutes. He screamed, "This sucks ass," and threw debris everywhere. Izuku searched the area for Shinso. If they wanted to win this without any issues, he had to take him out. He wanted a clean sweep, no questions asked, just like Bakugo. The Class B students, who were unaware of this new development, were shocked when he shot into the air. "Midoriya can fly," the blonde exclaimed, "Damn it. This guy's always using a new trick." In exasperation, Izuku blasted towards Shinso after spotting him in the air, but it turned out to be a trap. Yanagi and Monoma had prepared a trap in case Izuku managed to get to Shinso. Monoma cackled with delight as he was surrounded on all sides. "Let's see how your flight helps you now. They got me, but this isn't over." They would end up tying in a draw because Shinso was escaping and it would be difficult to locate him. For a brief moment, Izuku's eyes glowed green, and then massive black tendrils suddenly shot out in all directions, grabbing hold of every member of the other team. "What the hell is this? How many quirks do you freaking have?" Monoma screamed. Everyone else reacted exactly the same way. Not even a month had passed since Izuku discovered he could fly, and now this. "Aizawa, what the hell is that? You never gave info on that," shouted Vlad King. "Because I never knew he could do that. I don't know what's going on with the kid. I'm just as shocked as you are," the man replied. Might looked on in disbelief. That was another peculiarity of the former user. His team won by a clean sweep after he used the new ability to capture and knock out every opponent. Kirishima exclaimed, "Dude, what even are you? How many quirks do you have, man?" As Izuku touched down where the students had assembled. "Sorry, I'm just as confused as you are." The questions that were thrown at him truly had no answers for him. All Might nodded to him and turned to leave. Later, they would have to discuss this. Class A prevailed 3-1 at the end of the day. "Good work on not going crazy back there, kid. I'm impressed." Izuku turned to face the voice's origin and saw a bald man floating next to him. His gaze expanded. "You're another past user. Banjo Daigoro is the name. Nice to meet ya." After school, both classes had finished their battles for the day, and Izuku was the center of attention. Everyone was curious as to what on earth he had just pulled back there. Bakugo's rival was abandoning him, and his jealousy was making him foam in the mouth. The boy wasn't exactly a social butterfly, so it was a little too much for him to take. A familiar sound made his ears twitch. Something was rapidly approaching them. As if on autopilot, he spun around and pulled his flying senpai out of the air, glaring at her. By this point, He already knew what or, in this case, woe that was. You can't use your quirk on school grounds without permission. Nejire ignored what he said and asked him a ton of questions, not even allowing him to respond. When he finally had enough, he shushed her by covering her mouth with his hand. He let her go and pleaded, ask one at a time, and remember, if you don't breathe you're gonna pass out again, please. She said, sorry, I got carried away. Uraraka said, Hado-senpai, what are you doing here? Ochako, hey there, I heard what happened today, and I was dying to know more. Is it true? Did Izuku really get another quirk? Uraraka nodded and laughed, but he scowled a little at Nejire's apparent invasion of his personal space. The fact that Izuku didn't seem to mind was even more annoying. She answered, well yeah, it was something alright. Nejire turned her focus to another person, who was leaving the disturbance. Hey, you're Yaoyorozu right? With a hint of coldness in her voice, Momo said, yes I am. Do you need something senpai? Her tone caused Nejire to furrow her brow, but she quickly dismissed it. Izuku has mentioned you on many occasions, so I wanted to see for myself. Plus, I've seen you two around school a lot, so, are you two good friends? Momo gave a slight smile as she nodded, but she quickly wiped it away. Nejire's eyes narrowed in an unusual way. Even though she frequently came across as airheaded or even ditzy, that didn't necessarily mean she was stupid. Her interactions only served to confirm her suspicions. Forgive my directness with this question, but what exactly is your relationship with Midoriya? Momo asked abruptly. Nejire grinned. Let's say, childhood friends, yeah. I'm not so senpai. If you won't tell me, then I won't cry further. Nejire's smile vanished, and instead of her usual expression, she gave Momo a serious look. The girl with the raven hair inhaled deeply. She said, grinning once more, well, it was nice meeting you Yaoyorozu. We should talk again sometime. Back to Izuku, who was waiting for her, Nejire skipped. She pretended that what Momo was suggesting had gone unnoticed, but in reality, it had not. Although she was fully aware of what she was saying, there was never really a fight in the first place. The tiny smile that appeared on Nejire's face indicated that she had already won before it had even begun. Good luck to the both of you. So those black things were your quirk. Yup, the name of the quirk is Black Whip. I'm actually the 6th user of the quirk. So that means you're my predecessor, yes. Banjo laughed heartily and said, Shimura, it's nice to meet you again. Nana felt the same way her predecessor did. Izuku merely observed with a disbelieving expression. Two people were now speaking over his head that only he could see. People would assume he was insane if they saw this. He interrupted their conversation by asking a question he had posed to Nana when she first showed up. So how exactly did Black Whip awaken? Was it your doing? Not at all, kid. That was all on you. You see, you were in a moment of desperation. Much like how you were when you unlocked Float, said Nana. Yes, in that moment you were solely focused on catching your opponents, and boom. Black Whip. If you had been desperate for something else, you'd probably have unlocked another quirk other than mine, said the man. That makes sense. Though it was very hard to keep under control. If I had lost focus for even a second. Yeah, and that's hella good on you for that. You kept your mind clear, and managed your emotions perfectly. I'd say it was a successful awakening. Nana smiled slightly and added, yeah, he's a fast learner alright. You might be helpful, but you can be pretty ambiguous in your instructions, Izuku complained. Nana muttered something unintelligible under her breath, most likely making fun of the boy. He was returning to class, so the two ghosts decided to leave him alone for the time being. Shoto remarked, you never seem to surprise me. Izuku hoped the boy hadn't caught him talking to himself because he nearly jumped. He didn't. He tried to explain it away by saying, I really don't know what happened out there. It just came out of me. Maybe it's a quirk evolution or something. That would make the most sense, but I never thought there'd be more to your quirk than just raw power. Now you can fly, and shoot webs out of your hands. Izuku chuckled and said, I'm not Spider-Man Todoroki. You could be, like a Spider-Man with super strength. A super Spider-Man. Yeah, that sounds catchy, Shoto thought. I'll think about it. I still haven't decided on a hero name yet. Hey you two, Uraraka said as he caught up with them. Shoto said, Uraraka, where have you been? The nurse's office. I went to check up on Iida after I heard you guys were there, but I didn't see you. The two boys said, "Oh," together. They ran into Yuyu on the way back to class, and she waved to Izuku. He said, "Hiya senpai, it's been a while." With a slight smile, she returned the greeting, "Yo Izuku, and you must be Todoroki, and you're Uraraka, right? Nice to meet ya." Izuku inquired, "Are you going back to the dorms?" "Nah, I have some work to do at the teacher's faculty. Also, watch out for Nejire today, she's a bit, well you'll see. Later." That doesn't help my thinking at all. Nejire was behaving strangely, more strangely than normal. Fascinating. His female classmate noticed the slight flush that appeared on his face. The pit in her stomach slightly widened. Little was better than nothing, but she hadn't gotten very far with Izuku. Izuku was a very difficult person to read. Although it was nearly impossible to predict his thoughts, words, or reactions, Nejire had somehow figured it out to the point where he could tell when Izuku was lying. In her own way, her senpai was undoubtedly frightening. She hoped that she would get her chance during their brief winter break. XXX. Izuku found it easier to control Black Whip than to float. With his classmates Zero and occasionally Nejire, the training was fairly simple. He would need to use a Black Whip to seize her since she would be a moving target. It was obviously very hard to do so, and he might have been blasted at times. Izuku was thrown into the wall across the room by Nejire's nearly full-powered blast after he got a little carried away. She shouted out right away and hurried to see how he was doing. "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." He picked himself up and said, "Yeah, it's fine. Wouldn't be much of training if you didn't fight back." A tiny sensation of warmth ran down the back of his neck. He made a startled sound when he touched the area and saw red liquid on his fingers. He was bleeding. His expression briefly twisted into one of rage. His mind was filled with unpleasant memories, but he was able to quickly jolt out of his daze. "Ah, blood, I'll go get a bandage." Nejire called the word, "Wait," to stop him. "What is it?" She expressed regret and said, "I'm really sorry about this." She had no intention of causing him to bleed. Izuku dismissed her apology and walked away to hide the injury. Nejire was still upset about it. He might not have been aware of it, but he appeared extremely irate at the time, and she couldn't help but sense that the rage was aimed at her. She was reminded of the last time she had hurt him, and he reacted exactly the same way. "It's fine. It wasn't your fault," she thought to herself. It was though. There were times when her overexcited behavior caused more harm than good. Her emotions could have an impact on her energy levels, and getting overly excited could make her quirk stronger. The issue was that she wouldn't be able to control how strong it would be at that point. She was now causing Izuku pain once more. For her, it was a huge deal, even though it didn't sound like something to brag about. She sat down sullenly, replaying the events of the previous time. Izuku was sitting upright on the hospital bed while the two children and their mothers were in the infirmary. The blue-haired girl apologized, looking very dejected. "Auntie Inko. I'm really sorry. It was all my fault. I should have looked where I was using my quirk. Now Izuku's hurt because of me." Inko comforted the girl by massaging her back. She did appear to have taken it quite badly. "It's okay, Nejire-chan. Accidents happen." Izuku smiled slightly and added, "Yeah. It was out of your control. I can't blame you if your quirk tweaked out. We'll just be careful next time." Masumi palmed her face, but it was really an attempt to cover up the smirk on her face. She couldn't help but think about it, even though it wasn't the right moment to discuss something like that. Izuku was a genuinely kind boy. Find out more. Guides for narrative writing, software for creating stories, clothing with a fanfiction theme. And you'll have to learn to keep your emotions in check, Nejire. You don't want to hurt anyone else by accident again, do you? Nejire shook her head in response to her mother's query. If someone didn't deserve it, she wouldn't use her quirk to harm them again. Then that's that. If you train hard enough, you'll be able to use your quirk without losing control, and you'll be the best hero out there. Don't worry, Nejire. I'm rooting for you, Izuku said in an effort to motivate her. The girl gave him a tight hug and shed a few tears. "I promise I'll become better with my quirk. I'll train super hard and become super strong." Izuku inquired, "You feeling better now?" "Yeah, much better." Masumi teased, "Oh Izuku, you're spoiling her too much. Don't you want to get back at her? Even just a little?" Confused, the boy said, "No, not really, should I?" She had fulfilled her promise. More than most people would believe, Nejire trained her ass off. She enrolled at UA and became known as one of the school's most resilient students. Although she had a strong quirk, it was the promise she made to Izuku and to herself that made her stronger. Nevertheless, she went on to hurt him. Once more. He encountered Momo outside, who was en route to the nurse's office as well. Trailing a finger over the red line on his neck, she asked what had happened after noticing the tiny trail of blood. Izuku recoiled in mild astonishment. He clarified, "It's just a minor wound, I was training." "Ah, I see," she said, nodding in comprehension. "Hey Yaoyorozu, yes, I know this may seem a bit weird to ask, but how do you know you're in love with someone?" Momo paused, looking at him astonished. Why was he asking her, of all people, such a question out of the blue? There must have been more reliable sources for the solution, right? "Yeah, never mind that question," was the boy's apology after he realized that she might have been overly sensitive in her response. "No, I don't mind answering, but why ask me? I think Ishido would be a much better source for an answer." Find out more. A book. Services for beta readers. Subscriptions for writing software. Izuku instantly shook his head in disagreement with her response. "Ishido is the last person I would ask this question. You know how she gets, and I'm not keen on her stalking me every day," he said with a slight chuckle. She started to say, "I suppose you have a point there." So to answer your question, but stopped to consider her next words. "I can honestly only answer you from my personal experience with said emotion, so it may seem ambiguous." "Do you like someone?" Izuku exclaimed, startled. Of all people, he didn't think she would harbor such a feeling, or at the very least, not readily acknowledge it. She glanced at him and said, "Yes, I do. Unfortunately, my feelings haven't really gotten to the person in question." "Oh, sorry about that. I hope they do eventually." "I don't quite think so, Midoriya. Don't give me such hope." XXX. Ring, ring. Ah, finally, it's over. We're free. Settle down. We're still in school premises. Oh, chill out, Iida. The year's final class had just ended. With their exams and all, it had been a demanding 2 weeks for them. Now that Todoroki and Bakugo had received their provisional hero licenses, both boys were pleased that they had caught up to the class. Izuku did observe one thing during this period. He was no longer frequently followed by Nejire. He had grown to enjoy her company, so it was undoubtedly odd for him to see her gone. She appeared to avoid him at all times. Once, when he came near her, she fled. Did his bump cause it? She apparently continued to worry about it even after he had told her not to. He wasn't upset with her. He was not able to be. Before their Christmas party, Izuku made up his mind to get everything out. If that meant taking the initiative or going against his reserved nature, then so be it. He didn't even wait for his classmates, who were perplexed by his hasty departure. He stopped at the door as he arrived at the third-year class. All that stood between him and his senpai was a door. "Izuku," he turned when he heard Yuyu's well-known voice and said hello. "Hey there, Haya senpai, have you seen Nejire?" Nejire was right behind him, ready to slip away. The girl replied, "Nah, haven't seen her since she left class," but she made a tiny gesture behind him. As Nejire turned the corner, Izuku appeared to understand and turned abruptly. "Thanks, Haya senpai. I owe you one." As Izuku chased after her friend, the girl laughed. Nejire opted to hide rather than flee. Since Izuku tapped her shoulder from behind, she didn't choose the ideal location. "What are you hiding from?" "Gah." She looked down shyly as Izuku stood in front of her, his expression somewhat serious. After a pause, he said, "Nejire, are you avoiding me?" She tried to tell a lie as she looked at him, but she was unable to do so and simply nodded slowly. "Is it because of what happened?" She gave another nod. She directed the final statement at herself, saying, "I hurt Izuku, because I got carried away, not the first time it's happened either." Izuku couldn't contain his laughter. Was she really punishing herself for something so insignificant? Training with All Might caused him much more injuries. He remarked, "You're such a child, you know." "Hey, I'm being serious about this. You can't just let it go like that," she said. Izuku stopped laughing and said, "So what you're saying is, you want me to punish you?" "Well, why yeah. Are you serious?" asks Masocius. She was taken aback when Izuku took her hand and steered her away from the small group of people gathered around them. When they were alone once more, he paused and faced her. "Okay, so your punishment." Strangely, She appeared happier now than she had moments before. Was she a maso? Take me out on a date. Nejire unexpectedly entered her friend's room, clearly startling her with the loud noise and sending her flying up like a scared cat. Yu. Ha, Nejire. Don't just barge into someone's room like that. I could get a heart attack, you know. The girl exclaimed, her chest clenched dramatically. Nejire enthusiastically exclaimed, you won't believe what just happened. While totally ignoring her friend's grievance. Let me guess. You have a date. Nejire plopped down on her friend's bed and pouted. No fair. How did you know? Yu laughed at Nejire's immature response. Well, I mean, there's not much to guess. And besides, it was a guess. I just happened to be right this time. Still though, I wanted to tell you myself. Yu sat up on her bed and dismissed her friend's small protest. Anyways, he finally asked. Nejire blushed slightly and remarked, though I may have had a thing to do with it. Figures. Izuku's a pretty shy guy after all. Congratulations though, big step in your relationship. Our relationship. Duh, how do you think this is gonna end? You've already kissed each other, on more than one occasion might I add, and now you're going on a date. You two might as well be dating now, Yu replied with a smirk. As Nejire acknowledged, you have a point. When's the big day? We decided during winter break, when we're all back home. A Christmas date, I see. So that's what you wanted for Christmas is something else. Yu laughed. Stop making fun of me. Hey, I was kidding. Stop tickling me, Nejire. When Yu had had enough and retaliated, their tickle war ended in a truce, leaving both girls shaking on the ground. Doesn't sound right, NGL. From the doorway came a low voice that said, I have no idea how to process this. All of that was revealed when they turned to face Tamaki, who had come to return Yu's notes. He simply left after carefully dropping the notes at the door. Wait, we can explain. It's not what you think. He rushed off to get ready for the Christmas party, which, to be honest, he would spend by himself in a corner out of sight. Yes, that party would be ideal. Unfortunately, he was friends with the last two people on the planet who would allow that to occur. Tamaki, over here, shouted Mirio, gesturing toward him. The other student's abrupt attention made him shrink, and he screamed at his friend in his head. What a drag, XXX. All classes were now fully engaged in the celebration. It was hosted by Class 1A, with B joining them. Naturally, Monoma attempted to initiate a conversation, but this time, Izuku outwitted Kendo and knocked him unconscious in a strange manner, to Buddha, which attracted the girl's attention. She questioned, how did you do that? With a slightly menacing tone, he explained, pressure points, much faster way to put him to sleep, and painless, if you want it to be. That sounds pretty useful, maybe you could teach me sometime. He looked at the boy who was unconscious and said, yeah, sure. I can see why you'd need that. He should be out for no more than half an hour, based on how hard he pressed him. He would have to put him down if he began to yell once more. Mercy. He let out a sigh. This time, what did Mineta do? The boys were tying the boy in front of the TV after restraining him. He didn't even want to know what he was seeing because of the horror in his eyes. Izuku took the opposite route, avoiding the commotion as much as possible, and found himself beside Shoto, who had also left the commotion behind. Seeing his classmates relax and be authentic was quite pleasant. Class rivalries and assignments that Aizawa would unexpectedly present to them were not concerns. I hope he doesn't choose to give them Christmas presents. After a brief period of silence, he remarked, crowds aren't really my thing, or parties even. Never went to one before. The heterochromatic adolescent said, same. This is my first too, feeling somewhat relieved that he wasn't alone in that circumstance. Although there were some exceptions, such as Iida, who had vowed to maintain order but was failing miserably, Yaoyorozu, who also stood back to watch, Bakugo, who had just gone up to his room to sleep, and Uraraka, who appeared to be depressed about something. They were both happy to watch the others play around and have a good time. A slight frown creased Izuku's brows. Why did she appear so depressed? She was ultimately his very first friend at UA, and he worried about her. Unnoticed, he stood up and walked over to her. He tapped her shoulder and left, almost causing her to scream. She stood up and went after him. They both took a seat outside and remained silent for a while. He broke the silence by asking, you seem down, anything wrong? Uraraka paused for a moment to gather her mind. Honestly, I don't really know. Perhaps now was the ideal time to share her feelings with him. He had no idea, but she was among those who witnessed what transpired that day when he ran after Nejire, and it gave her confirmation. The girl had captured Izuku's heart. Her friendship with him was far more important to her than liking him, which was the only thing preventing her from saying or doing anything. Even though she knew Izuku liked someone else, she didn't want to lose him as a friend simply because she told him. She was pushed by the conversation she had with Momo the last time. However, even though it wouldn't go anywhere, he deserved to know. Izuku, I think there's something you should know, she said. Startled by the use of his first name, he turned. Only Yuyu and Nejire have called him that thus far. Since Uraraka was one of his closest friends, he didn't mind, but it seemed like she had another reason for doing this. But one thing was certain, this would not be a typical discussion. What is it? I know this would seem out of the blue, and I know it's not going anywhere, but I've really liked you, for a while now. You don't have to answer, and I'm not looking for one. I just think that as my friend, you deserve to know, and I can't keep lying to you, or myself about how I feel, but I didn't want to ruin my friendship with you. Izuku listened with a startled expression. Was he truly that stupid? Or did he simply not pay attention? Most likely the latter. After a few seconds, he finally opened his mouth to speak. I'm really sorry Uraraka, but she finished for him by saying, I know. You like someone else. He felt bad about making her cry, and he looked down, but there was nothing he could do at that moment. She gently nudged him on the shoulder to get his focus again. With a sigh of relief, she said, you shouldn't feel guilty. I'm just glad you didn't run off. Losing him as a friend was the last thing she desired. Well, it's the least I could do for you. Running away won't change anything, plus I'd be a huge jerk if I did that. Despite everything, you're still one of my best friends, and things shouldn't change just because of this. So don't worry, I'm not going anywhere, just for today, he replied with a slight grin. Feeling much better, Uraraka laid her head on his shoulder. She was relieved that she had let everything out and that the burden had been removed. Izuku took no action. Although he didn't romantically like Uraraka, he would honor his promise and provide her with the resolution she required. He would be the Izuku that she desired, only once. Another person, leaning against the door with a heavy sigh, watched all of this unfold without noticing and gently closed it behind her. To be honest, she was torn. She was both selfishly relieved that her confession went this way and sad for her friend. Actually, she always knew it would, but she wasn't the type to confront problems head-on. Her purposeful support, encouragement, and insistence that her friend not express her feelings were all for this one moment and, consequently, one less competitor. Again, she never claimed to be a saint, but it was awful of her as a friend. It was the reality. She didn't fight in a fair manner, and she had accepted her identity. Sorry it's come to this Uraraka, but you left me no other choice. XXX. Beast, beast, beast. A drowsy Izuku put his hand out and stopped his alarm clock from ringing, asking, what time is it? Wrapped in his blanket, he relished the warmth. He was annoyed that his phone was buzzing so much that he picked it up to find out what was disturbing his quiet morning. It was a warning. December 24th. Nejire's date. Shit, thud. He rubbed the back of his head and moaned, ow. How could he possibly forget? Nejire had indeed bombarded him with reminders. She appeared to be more thrilled about this than he was, but that was untrue. Even though it sounded awkward, he had already prepared whatever he was wearing and had spent the previous evening hanging out. He would never tell Nejire about it, though. He was lying on the floor in a strange position when his mother opened the door to his room. She raised an eyebrow and questioned, honey, what are you doing? Using his situation as an opportunity to practice yoga, he explained, I fell down, and I thought I might do some yoga while I'm down here. Impressed by how fast he had thought of that, Inko laughed and let him alone. He had been telling her about his upcoming date for the past week, and to her surprise, it was with Nejire. While the two children played in the park, Inko and Masumi kept an eye on them. Their two children had made them close friends, and they suppressed a giggle when Nejire stumbled and fell, but Izuku caught him. Are you okay? Why yeah, I'm fine Izuku. The girl blushed slightly. Both mothers laughed when they saw this brief exchange. Masumi threw one at them because she was the one who teased them. She smirked slightly and remarked, you two are so adorable together. You're kind of like a couple, you know. Mom. Izuku cocked his head, perplexed. By that, What did she mean? Couple, us, ha. It made him laugh. Nejire pouted and scowled. She yelled, well, excuse me for not being good enough for you. I hope you find someone else. Before bolting into the bushes. She ran, and Izuku ran after her, saying, hey. Wait, did I say something wrong? The statement, you've been getting a lot bolder lately, was made by Inko. With her trademark smirk, Masumi answered, am I really? Just give them time, I'm sure Izuku would come around someday. Her admiration for the two kids becoming a couple was well known. And you could say that she occasionally took on the role of Cupid, setting them on that path with her little teasing. As she walked out and shut the door to Izuku's room, Inko grinned. Guess you were right, Masumi. A couple of hours later. Oh no, I hope I'm not too early. Wouldn't it seem desperate if I'm here an entire 30 minutes early? I should have listened to Mom and stayed home, now I'm gonna stick out like a sore thumb. Nejire chastised herself in her head for being too early. It was 9:30, and she was meant to meet Izuku at 10. Might as well sit down. She got herself a cream puff and took a seat at a little table outside a cafe. Copyright. Given that she had a date in a few minutes, she only received one. A group of girls were chatting excitedly among themselves next to her table. Wait, who's that? Oh my god, he's so handsome. He's alone. We should go talk to him. What's such a good-looking guy like him doing out here all alone? Nejire turned to face her and saw what they were talking about. Izuku was the one. He didn't look the same as he did at school. He wore a brown coat, black pants, and black shoes because it was chilly. He had a dark red scarf around his neck and his hair pulled back into a small man bun. The girls squealed as he turned to face her. He's looking this way. Yeah, obviously he's looking at me. No, me. Out of pure spite, Nejire decided to stick it to these hussies because she had had enough of them. Waving to him, she exclaimed, Izuku, over here, and stood up. Wait, is she his girlfriend? She's so pretty. Damn, he's already taken. They look so good together, one complained. The girls yelled in fear as Nejire clung to Izuku's arm and gave them a menacing glare. They appeared to receive a single message from her eyes telepathically. Never. Attempt this once more. Izuku laughed nervously and said, did they do something wrong? Your whole aura screams of death. She gave him a charming smile, completely changing her attitude. No need to worry about it, Izuku, I was just setting things straight. He didn't ask any more questions because he wasn't sure what she would say. She did it for her own reasons. He would have planned their day, but Nejire declined, and he could understand why. She was naturally quite impulsive and followed her own thoughts. He was ready and willing to be pulled along everywhere. Even though it was a little exhausting, it was actually quite enjoyable. All he wanted was to be with Nejire. These are so yummy. Where do you find this place? It was my mom actually. She recommended it. I'm happy you like it. After biting into her crepe, Nejire thrust it in Izuku's direction. Here, try it. She kept shoving her crepe in his face, so he gave in and took a bite. I already have one, never mind. Red in the face, he assumed it was an indirect kiss. Should that even cause him to become agitated? They'd shared a kiss before. He pretended that it was due to the cold, but she saw through it and gave him a sly smile. Are you embarrassed about something, Izuku? And no, I'm not, was his somewhat hurried response. She laughed at his response when he averted his gaze. Hey, there's somewhere I'd like to show you before we head home, she replied. As they moved through the streets, she grabbed him by the arm and accelerated their pace. The sky was a vivid orange as the sun began to set. It was a park. His brows were furrowed. It had a peculiar yet recognizable appearance. After leading him through the trees for about halfway, Nejire unexpectedly took the initiative. He started to accelerate. The flashes returned, but they were much more intense this time. His memories of this location, the small park where he had played as a child, and the narrow tree-lined path that led to his special spot were gradually returning. I come here to be alone, to get away from everything. ... Looks like the loser found his fortress of solitude. Ha. ... Let's go, guys. We don't need Deku anymore. ... Hey, are you lost too? ... My name is Nejire. Nejire Hado. He looked down at his reflection and muttered, Nejire. When he finally halted his running, he turned to face the small stream of water that was trickling below. All the years he had forgotten returned to him. The tears started to flow. After catching up to him, Nejire gave him a gentle smile. Between sobs, he said, I'm sorry. For what? I'm really sorry. For forgetting you, for forgetting everything, please forgive me, Nejire. She comforted him by giving him a soft embrace from behind. It's fine, Izuku, it's okay. In a cozy silence, they took a seat in front of the stream. Once more, Izuku spoke, his voice no longer trembling with tears. I can't help but feel bad, knowing that you've known this all this time, and how I've been completely oblivious. Nejire gave him a charming smile after wiping the tears from his eyes. She gently squeezed his hand and said, I said it before, and I'll say it again, don't feel bad about it. It was completely out of our control. I think I get it now. Get what? Our promise. Back then I was confused about it, but now I know what it means. You do, huh? That's good. While it was sad that you forgot, I'm happy that I got the chance to make you fall for me all over again, she said with an arrogant grin. You just assumed I fell for you. Am I wrong? Izuku chuckled a little. I guess you're right. I'm glad I got to fall in love with you all over again. After giving each other a gentle kiss, they both leaned in and withdrew. Nejire's cheeks were pinched. Her question was, so what now? Well, we're back together now. And I promise you, I'm not going anywhere again. Nejire concluded, yeah, I'm counting on that. He helped her up and wiped away the tears in his eyes, saying, it's already dark. I'll walk you home. Nejire tilted her head, startled and worried about the boy. Really, you just had a lot hit you all of a sudden though. Yeah, I'm sure of it. It all returned to him after he had been in the dark for so long and had been having sporadic dreams. In this instance, at least, he was whole once more. He may not have remembered everything, but he did recall the most crucial details. His pledge to his beloved girl. Izuku, when we meet again, let's be together forever. Yeah, we'll be together forever. The hottest time of year in the nation is during summer break. Some found a positive side to the harsh, unrelenting sun, even though it was annoying. Izuku was contentedly confined to his room, with his gaming console operating flawlessly, the air conditioner running full blast, and his lights off. For a nerd like him, it was paradise. No one would bother him if he stayed in his room all day. If it weren't for certain individuals he knew, that's what he would have said. They had just been in a war a few weeks prior that had destroyed billions of dollars worth of property and completely upended society. In particular, he had engaged Shigaraki in a life-or-death struggle and ultimately prevailed. The best way for him to recuperate and unwind was to play games in his room, which was exactly what he needed. He was genuinely afraid to check the messages on his phone, which was constantly buzzing with notifications. Izuku could tell what was happening based on how often his phone would vibrate. He didn't want it to throw him off his game in any way. He was competing in an official competition in a very serious ranked match. Izuku was currently losing ground due to the small distractions, despite being one of the top 3 players in the entire nation. His teammate's message appeared on his TV screen. Sandman. Hey, what's happening? You haven't kept up. Opening square bracket, closing square bracket. As the game came to an end, he sighed. Fortunately, his team prevailed, albeit narrowly. Though it shouldn't be enough to push him out, he had undoubtedly lost some ground in the rankings. At last he made the decision to investigate and find out what the commotion was about. He said, a group chat, when he noticed the notification on his phone. Mirio. In 20 minutes, we will arrive at the train station. Yes, that sounds good, Haya. Tamaki. Is it not possible for me to remain at home? No, Mirio, Haya, Nejire, others. You are coming, Tamaki. Middle finger. Mirio. I'll be over to pick you up, Tamaki. This time, you're not going to get away. Nejire. Izuku has not yet made a statement. Is he not online? Izuku. I've arrived. Nejire. Well done. Give me a moment. The screen displayed her name. He had received a private message from her. Nejire. You're going out today, but I know you're probably cooped up in your room playing games with your dad. There are no buts or ifs. Prepare to meet us in 20 minutes at the train station. Izuku. I'm not even given a voice. Nejire. Not at all. You would never leave your room if you did. Now, prepare yourself, okay. I'm excited to spend the day with you. Hee hee. Izuku let out a sigh. He couldn't refuse Nejire, even though it wasn't what he had intended to do. She did get her way with him all the time, yes. Perhaps he was spoiling her excessively. He told himself, might as well get ready. He didn't make any effort with his attire because it was a beach day. He would require a basic beach shirt, shorts, a medium-sized backpack, his sun hat, and sunglasses, perhaps even one for Tamaki. His mother had already departed for the day. He had the day to himself because, according to her, she was in the next city visiting a friend. To pass the time, Izuku made the decision to walk to the train station. He was certain that he would eventually run into some of his classmates. After all, it was summer vacation. He arrived at the same time as Mirio and Tamaki, who were the last people to arrive. Izuku became a little anxious when he realized that the majority of the students were third-year freshmen. Other than the usual four, he hadn't really spoken to any of them. Mirio said, "Yo Midoriya. It's good to see you here." Tamaki said, "Hey," as well, though she did so with a sigh of acceptance. Izuku chuckled and said, "Yeah, you guys didn't really give me much of a choice." "Izuku, over here," called Nejire. The girl joyfully skipped over to him and grabbed his shades as soon as he waved. "Hey, never mind, you can have them." Tamaki nodded slightly and remarked, "Ah, incognito, nice plan." The teen with blue hair was taken aback when Izuku gave him the other pair. "You can have these. I thought you might need them, being in the sun and all." "You're a lifesaver, Midoriya," Tamaki remarked as she put them on and felt instantly more at ease. Nejire exclaimed, "What are we waiting for? Let's go already," with excitement. Izuku turned to see someone else standing next to him after sensing their presence. The man had bright red hair and was only marginally taller than Izuku. He held out his hand and said, "I'm Ken Sabito. I've heard a lot about you, Midoriya." Izuku grinned slightly and accepted the handshake. He said courteously, "It's nice to meet you." You're the first year that swept Nejire off her feet. "I can see why," said another girl, winking at Izuku, who trembled. Her eyelashes were absurdly long, which made it feel extremely strange. If you could ignore the noise the other passengers were making as they discussed their plans or how the ocean would feel in this kind of heat, the train ride was comparatively quiet. Yamada Hado, Izuku's gaming partner, texted him. "Mr. Hado, I've heard that you two are going to the beach. Enjoy yourself and keep an eye out for Nejire. Additionally, there is this group of young people who believe they are attractive. When you return, let's push them down a few pegs." Izuku laughed. Mr. Hado had the ability to be cruel when he felt like it, especially to novices who were becoming too arrogant. Noobslayer was his game name at one point. Izuku. "All right, I'll be sure to do that." When he felt a hand on his face, he nearly leapt from his chair. She playfully pinched Nejire's cheek to get his attention. She said, "What's up to Izuku?" He clarified, "It's nothing much. Just game stuff." Nejire gave a nod. She was aware of his entire covert gaming career and that he collaborated with her father. To be honest, he was the one who introduced Izuku to games, and she became envious of their apparent compatibility. Izuku's memory loss put a stop to it, but they were back to playing games together as if nothing had happened. One of them exclaimed, "We're finally here." As the train came to a stop, the white sand, the crystal clear blue water, and the throngs of people who had also come to enjoy the beach were already visible to them. Tamaki and Izuku had the same idea. "I really should have stayed home." Some guys yelled, "Let's go, beach babes," and hurried off to chat with the women. Unexpectedly, Nejire didn't notice when Izuku put his shades back on after he had swiped them away from her while she wasn't looking. He gave himself a mental pat on the back because, like Tamaki, he felt less exposed to the sun. Since the boys were already in their swim trunks, they immediately made their way to the water while the girls went to change into their swimsuits. Izuku placed a sheet of cloth over the sand and set up his portable beach umbrella in a pleasant location. "Ah, you had the same idea as me. I'm not surprised." He was unaware that Tamaki had also set up an umbrella to shield himself from the sun and people. His fan base had grown significantly, which was frightening for an introvert like him who wasn't used to the unwarranted attention he was receiving. "I wanted to ask, how's being a pro hero been like?" Gazing at the sand, Tamaki reflected on his experiences as a professional hero thus far. "I thought of one word." The word, troublesome, was his. Izuku choked back a laugh. That was the most sincere response you could expect from Tamaki. "Of course you two would be here, are you allergic to the sun or what?" With a weary sigh, Tamaki said, You guys already forced me out here, Haya. The least you could do is take pity on me and let me rest. Though he never expressed it aloud, Izuku agreed with his senpai. Hey Izuku, come here. Oh man, Izuku, you really are a man. For us ordinary mortals, seeing Nejire in a bathing suit was a boon. She made a fairly straightforward decision that was ostensibly much cuter than sexy. Unfortunately cut short, her gorgeous blue hair blew gently in the light wind. Izuku liked what he was witnessing. What a fortunate bastard he was to have such a cute girlfriend. As Izuku arose with renewed vigor and strode in the direction of his girlfriend, Tamaki gasped in frustration and mildly amused betrayal. Yu laughed at his response. As he stopped in front of her, the girl tilted her head and asked, Izuku, what's wrong? You got this intense look in your eyes. He said, I love you, while maintaining a straight face. 1, 2, 3, and 4 seconds. Then she realized. What? How can you say that so casually? She exclaimed, blushing profusely. He reiterated, I said I love you, Nejire, with equal conviction. I heard you the first time. Her blush didn't really go away, but she took a few deep breaths to relax. She scowled at Izuku after he made a tiny noise. You're messing with me, aren't you? Izuku laughed. Yeah, I was, but I mean what I said. I really do love you, Nejire. Of course, I know that, she said in an attempt to appear arrogant, but it seemed more like she was making a fruitless attempt to put on a front. Perhaps he ought to make fun of her more frequently. Her responses were endearing. He would never deny that he was that in love. He would comply with his girlfriend's wishes today despite the intense heat and brightness of the sun. She said, hey, gimme your hat, as she removed it from him and put it on herself. Izuku protested a little but gave in. She attempted to take his glasses, but he raised them out of her reach to prevent her from doing so. It was funny to watch her try to get it because she wasn't as tall as him. He was surprised when Nejire snarled and leapt on him. As the waves swept over them, they stumbled and fell into the water. Despite the cold, he felt warm. He was pressed up against Nejire, who had fallen on top of him. She saw that the closeness between them caused his face to heat up. It was her turn to exact revenge on him for what had happened earlier. How's the view from down there, Izuku? He said almost instantly, it is amazing. I never want to look at anything ever again. Nejire sat up and yelled. Once more, how could he have said such things in such a casual manner? You're not making this fun, you know, she said, sulking a little. She was even more annoyed that her attempts to tease him were unsuccessful when he burst out laughing. No matter what, she was going to get him today. I guess you were right about them. They both turned to look at Yu and Mirio, who were grinning broadly. In order to avoid making fun of them, Izuku flipped the tables and spoke to them. He didn't think it would work, but they both turned away and blushed a little. He grinned. Win. Not wanting to be the target of the taunt, Yu stepped in right away. That's enough. You've made your point, Izuku. Nejire led her boyfriend away from them and waved, have fun you too. As they left the denser area, Izuku said, Nejire, where are we going? She winked and said, it's a secret. It was considerably cooler than the main beach and had more trees that shaded the sky. In actuality, he liked this location better. At last, she paused and took a seat on a log beside a small creek, patting the spot beside her. Izuku took a seat beside her. How did you find this place? I came here during our first year trip. I wandered around and kinda got lost. Luckily one of the teachers found me, she said with a slight chuckle. Izuku grinned. It was a lot like how she ended up in his life after getting lost. He was somewhat relieved that she got lost that day. He muttered, if you hadn't gotten lost that day. She put her head on his shoulder and entwined their fingers, grinning at the recollection. I'm glad I did too, Izu, and I'm glad I met you that day. She turned to face Izuku as he did. He gently pulled her into a kiss with his hands moving to the side of her face. It wasn't quite there, but it felt good. Not just yet. They withdrew and resumed their kiss, but it wasn't quite what they were hoping for this time. Nearing completion, she pushed past the tiny barrier and eventually crossed it as her tongue moved around the corner of his mouth. Additionally, boom, in between pants, Izuku uttered, Nejire, I think we should stop before we get carried away. This private moment with the girl, his feelings for her, and the structure of his body had all set off something inside of him. She said, why yeah, and moved away from him. It was clear that they had become a little too enamored with their brief moment. Numerous thoughts were racing through her head. She had never done anything like this before, and she had never looked at Izuku with anything but love. What was this feeling, though? Arousal. Knock, knock, knock. Even though it was late in the evening, Izuku shifted in his bed when he heard someone tapping loudly and impatiently on his dorm window. Could that be someone or something? A spirit? He sincerely hoped not. Aizawa would not be amenable to him yelling like a girl in the middle of the night, and he was surprisingly easy to frighten. Knock, knock, knock. All right, it wasn't working. He was the ninth one for all wielder and the heir to all might. He was not afraid of some stupid ghost. All day long, he was already surrounded by a couple. He said, "Huh, who's that? Knock, knock, knock." He rolled onto his side with a heavy sigh, and when he saw who was at the window, he nearly screamed. He slid the window open and got out of bed. "Nejire, what are you doing here?" he whispered sharply. Nejire ignored his question entirely as he entered through the window and sat down on his bed, grinning broadly. He grimaced. "Seriously, do you know what time it is? And how did you even get past UA security?" She answered, "Simple, I flew here." He yelled, "But, your quirk, it's too flashy to miss at night." As if reprimanding a child. His tone made Nejire pout. While crossing her arms over her ample chest, she uttered, "Izuku's being mean. I came all this way to see you, you know." Izuku let out a sigh. He chuckled slightly and said, "Sorry. I'm just surprised how bad security really is. You'd stick out like a sore thumb when it's dark. Well, to answer your question before, I just wanted to see you. Yeah, it's been a while since I actually got to, you know, since UA resumed and all." Izuku said timidly, "Makes sense, thanks for coming to see me." It was an act of genuine flattery. Nejire was now a full-fledged pro-hero and had just left her parents' house. She may have been exhausted, but she made the long flight to see him in spite of her hectic life. She said abruptly, "Hey, why don't we step outside a little bit?" "Huh, to where? Who knows? We could just go where the wind blows us." "That seems like something you'd do." "Okay," Izuku remarked, grinning a little. However, he asked why Nejire didn't use her quirk when they emerged through the window. "Well, you said it. I'd stick out like a sore thumb. You'll have to carry me." He thought to himself, so that was her game all along. Well played, girlfriend. You're really clever, aren't you? She looked smug as she said, "Just based on what you said, I don't know what you're talking about." After picking her up in his arms, Izuku leapt off the balcony and into the night sky. Both of them didn't care that their hair was splaying everywhere due to the strong wind up where they were. It was more soothing to fly out this way than he had anticipated. He simply shut off his mind because he was so relaxed. Before they broke out above them, they ascended into a small patch of clouds. Now that the sky was clear, the moonlight was at its brightest. He grinned as he looked down. He was unable to see anything at all. Leaping out of his arms, Nejire floated softly next to him. "Hey Izuku, do you know how to dance?" His brows were furrowed. He chuckled a little and said, "Not really. I never did take it seriously." "Don't worry, I'll lead the way. It'll be just like when we were little," she exclaimed, grabbing both of his hands and putting them on her. Fortunately, the moon wasn't bright enough to completely highlight the red tint on his face, so he blushed a little. "Okay, just relax, and let follow my movements, K." He responded with a slow nod. She guided him gently through the steps in a slow, methodical waltz. She laughed. "Kinda weird without the music." Yeah, they whirled around in the air, their own dance illuminated by the green sparks from Izuku and the brilliant golden shimmers from Nejire's quirk. One is subtly gentle, while the other is unpredictable and violent. Despite their stark contrast, they are exquisitely intertwined. Their waltz came to an end when Izuku pulled her into his arms once more and gave her a tender kiss in the moonlight. She smiled and remarked, "You're a quick learner. You're a great teacher." Nejire took his hand and headed in a specific direction. As they emerged back under the clouds and over the gorgeously lit city, Izuku trailed behind her. As if they were their own stars, thousands of lights glowed in the darkness. Izuku confessed, "I'm kind of tempted to be a nighttime hero now." "Yeah, but too bad for me. Villains would see me coming a mile away," Nejire laughed. They took a seat on the edge of one of the city's tallest buildings after landing there. The breeze blew gently, which was a welcome change from the way it was way up. Izuku said, "So, how's being a hero like?" Nejire sighed, leaning against him. He noticed that her smile faded a little. It's tiring honestly. I never knew heroes went through so much stuff. Did something happen? His girlfriend gave him a gentle nod, fell silent for a few seconds, and then spoke up once more. My mind is constantly on my friends, you know, and I truly miss them. Sure, we get to see each other occasionally, but it's not nearly as much as I would like. I just realized that I'm still a rookie. I've made a lot of mistakes here and there, but fortunately they haven't caused any serious harm. I can't help but feel like everyone is gradually drifting away due to responsibilities, but again, that's life, right? Mirio and Tamaki are constantly busy, and Yuyu is in a different region of the nation. After hearing her brief tirade, Izuku realized why she had come to see him. He was sympathetic to her. She was correct. All of her close friends were now following their own paths. That was life. After some time, Izuku remarked, "It's kinda weird seeing you all glum like this. But I get it. Still, it won't change the fact that they're still your friends. That will never change. I will help in my own way though. So whenever you feel lonely, just call. Even if it's in the middle of the night, I'll come to you." Okay. Isn't that going to be stressful for you? You have a lot on your plate, Izuku.
Nah. You're my girlfriend. It's my duty to keep you happy, even if I have to sneak out of school, he joked. Okay. But if I notice your grades get lower, it's off, deal? You sound like my mom right now. Deal. After that conversation with Izuku, Nejire woke up feeling much better. Her words were, "I'll race you to school," as she leapt from the building's edge.
Seriously, do you always do this? He exclaimed as he leapt after her. Regarding it being a race to school, Nejire kind of lied. They arrived at a ramen shop after simply gliding over the city. Izuku followed the girl as she pushed through the curtains, and the old man grinned at her. "Hey hey old man Tuki," she said. He turned to face Izuku, who had greeted him, and said, "Nejire-chan. It's good to see you. Oh, and I see you brought a guest. Ah, so you're the Izuku Midoriya. I must thank you personally for what you did for all of us back then. Never did get to see you in person. You're pretty elusive, you know," the man laughed. Nejire took a seat beside her and patted the area. Izuku sat down as well, a little embarrassed that the man knew him. He generally avoided the attention he had been receiving lately because he was still getting used to it. Fortunately, he was friends with Bakugo, who was known for drawing attention, as well as Shoto. "Nejire, you'll be getting the usual right. And what will young Midoriya be getting?" Izuku answered, "I'll get the same as her." Tsuki looked at him with a hint of concern. "That's not really advisable, young man. Nejire-chan over here may not look like it, but she's a black hole. Most people would enter a food coma if they are what she does." Izuku trembled at the idea. "Oh okay, then just scale it down. Comin' right up." A thought occurred to him, and he looked for a specific photo on his phone. "Hold on." He turned to face Tsuki, who smiled knowingly at him. He winked and said, "I understand what you're thinking, kid. Coincidences can be frightening. Now go." The Tsuki from Naru was the same one. He placed Izuku's bowl in front of him and expertly placed Nejire's down for her, saying, "Here's your ramen. And the Nejire special." The ridiculous quantity of food Izuku had received almost caused her eyes to burst out of their sockets. Tsuki wasn't kidding when he said that. Not even the potential universe-jumping ramen chef had crossed his mind. He finished it quickly, and it was delicious. Unbelievably, his girlfriend was too. He had no idea where all that food had gone. Izuku turned away as she arched backwards and exclaimed, I'm full." "Ignore that." Tsuki smiled slightly and said, "Because we have a special guest. Today's meal is on the house." "Really? Thanks," exclaimed Nejire. With less vigor than his girlfriend, Izuku said, "Thank you. I'll be sure to drop by again. I'll be waiting for Yamadoriya." He smiled contentedly as he watched them both take off. Watching people devour his food was the greatest source of satisfaction for him as a chef. Somewhere, it made him think of a certain knucklehead. A female voice called out from behind, "Hey dad. You're smiling like a creep. I just had a very special customer Ayame." After arriving at Ua, the couple crept back into Izuku's room. Nejire cuddled comfortably with her boyfriend, forgetting that she was no longer a student, as the exhaustion quickly overtook them and they fell asleep. Knock, knock, knock. "Midoriya, open up." In a panic, they both leapt from the bed. It was already morning. Nejire yelled, diving behind the bed, "Crap," as Iida pushed the door open. "Good morning Iida. Sorry, I was kinda lost in thought. No worries. Actually Mr. Aizawa was doing a checkup on each student's room to see if we're keeping the place intact. He's just a few doors away, Iida said as he left. Just great. What a shameful stroke of luck. After being awakened by Iida as well, Bakugo was complaining as he passed his door when he noticed a mop of blue hair behind Izuku. Izuku grimaced. Nejire's hiding skills were appalling. What explanation would he give his teacher, then? He was wearing a terrified expression, and he had already prepared an excuse as Aizawa walked to his room. Boom. To get his teacher's attention, Bakugo yelled, "Who the fuck left a Lego out here?" And then exploded out of his palms. It worked. Aizawa turned to glare at him right away, and Nejire got out when the blonde turned to face her and seemed to be yelling for her to leave. She leapt out the window and flew away before anyone could see her. Aizawa frowned as she questioned, "What was that about, Bakugo?" "I stepped on a Lego." The man turned back to Izuku's room and said, "That doesn't give you the right to use your quirk, and in the dorms no less. I won't warn you again." With a sigh of relief, the green-haired boy turned to face his classmate, who turned away. "I owe you one. Another winter break, another year." Now that Christmas was coming up, it would be a full year since Izuku and Nejire had begun dating. He was now anticipating his last year at UA and becoming a full-fledged pro-hero upon graduation. By this point, the majority of his classmates were either heroes or sidekicks. He wanted to really get out there and climb the ladder, but he was one of those people. He couldn't truly claim to be aiming for the top spot. He had already accomplished his first objective. He didn't really have anything to do anymore because he had also defeated All for One, but that didn't stop him from getting excited about it. Whoa. The noise downstairs almost made him jump, and he was left wondering what in the world was going on. What could have caused him to yell in that manner, even though it sounded like Kirishima? Yes, a lot, but usually not very loud. I guess I'll see what's up for myself. He went down to the common area after leaving his room to see what was causing all the noise. According to Kirishima, who claimed to have witnessed Bakugo and Uraraka enter the dorms holding hands during his morning workout, it appears that Bakugo and Uraraka began dating. Unlike Uraraka, Bakugo was unable to play it off. Instead, he was furious and yelling at the redhead, attempting to appear menacing but falling short. If anything, he merely validated their suspicions. Uraraka grimaced. Well, cat's out of the bag now. The blonde turned and looked directly at Izuku, who smirked slightly. He glared at him as soon as he turned to face him. He said, lowering his voice, "Don't mess with me, Izuku. And don't tell Mom about this." Izuku raised his hands in surrender and said, "Wouldn't dream of it." With his face buried in his hands, Bakugo muttered something to himself and walked away. Izuku congratulated his female friend, Uraraka, saying, "I'm happy for you." "Thanks," he said. "Well, if you'll excuse me. I was in the middle of sleeping." Later, as he made his way back upstairs to his room, leaving his classmates to continue with their original activities. XXX. So let me get this straight. You're writing your property in my name. Isn't that a bit too much? Izuku was perplexed. All Might shook his head and grinned. "It is something I've been working on for quite some time, young Midoriya. I already made my mind a while ago, so yes, I've thought it through. I don't have any family, or even a close relative that I know of, and you're the closest thing to family to me," said the man. Izuku cast a downward glance. All Might's words made him happy, but still, did he truly intend to do all of that? Also, there's something else I'd like you to know. All Might had been anxious about a lot of things in the past, but this time he was more anxious than he had ever been. In his office, he sat across from Izuku and they gazed at one another. The boy gazed at his teacher with a blank expression on his face. At last, he raised his voice. He started, "So, you and my mom." The ex-professional could only look down and nod timidly. Izuku's expression did not help the situation at all. "Yes, I was going to tell you, but she decided against it." Izuku said, "Anyone else knows about this?" All Might gave a nod. "Well, yes, Mrs. Hato is also aware of this." Izuku pinched the bridge of his nose and nodded. Not that he was angry or anything, but this was a lot to process. He was, if anything, pleased for them both. All Might's father never showed up, and he had no one in his life. To him, the man was a better father than his biological father ever was. "I assume this is a lot to take in for you. I understand if you feel disturbed," said the Almighty.
No, I don't. Actually, I'm happy for you too. I'm just baffled at why my mom decided to hide it from me. He could relate to the boy's perspective and would feel the same way if he were in his position. It's fine. Again, I'm happy for you too, but I'll ask one thing. What is it? My mom has been a huge part of my life. She's given me everything, and she's very precious to me. Please take care of her, and make her happy. All Might nodded, grinning. I give you my word. XXX. Eri dear, come down on we'll be late, shouted Inko from outside. The girl shouted back, I'm coming, and hurried out of the house. They were on their way to the Hados for a Christmas party, and it was Christmas once more. Toshinori raised an eyebrow and said, isn't this a bit much? Even for the cold. Eri gave a headshake. I'm really cold. My nose is all red. See. With a laugh, the man turned on the ignition and drove away. Izuku had already arrived, having spent the previous night there at Yamada's request. Izuku and Nejire began dating exactly a year ago today, and they spent the entire day out together doing couples activities. When they finally reached their destination, they exited the vehicle. At the door, Masumi was already waiting for them. Eri sprinted over to embrace the woman. Auntie Masumi. The woman returned the greeting by putting her arms around the girl and embracing her. Eri my dear, how are you? She asked. After correctly parking the vehicle, Toshinori trailed them inside. Yamada laughed a little and said, Toshinori. It's good to see you again. Still feels weird to address you like this. Yeah, I'm still getting used to it. Izuku and Nejire had not yet arrived, and Sei remained in his room. In the first place, where were they? Eri noticed the steaming stack of baked goods on the table and said, Auntie Masumi, can I have a cookie? Of course. Come with me. Dear, when I asked you said no, protested Yamada, amused by his wife's favorable treatment of the young girl. Masumi gave him a slight scowl. That's because you've been stuffing yourself too much lately. You'll eat them all. The man sighed and said, man, hope you don't have to deal with this Toshinori. It's a hassle. Toshinori laughed at what his friend had said. Nejire and Izuku entered the house and exclaimed, hey everyone. We're here. Then, God knows what they've been up to, but they were both smiling foolishly. The adults looked at them amusedly. You two finally decided to show up, huh? Izuku scratched the back of his head and said, sorry about that. We kinda got carried away. Masumi grinned. While I think it's too early for me to have grandchildren, I won't object. The implication caused everyone to cough, and Eri appeared perplexed. Innocently, she inquired, are Izuku and Nejire going to have children? Oh my, here's your cookie Eri, Inko interrupted, frantically attempting to shift the conversation. Eri didn't have to understand that. Nejire reprimanded, Mom, you're not subtle at all. I can't help it, it's a bad habit of mine, though I'd say you're not much different than I am. Nejire was unable to disagree. When it came to Izuku in particular, she was just as blatant as her mother. Looking back, she essentially threw herself at him, and she wasn't complaining. The best way to deal with her boyfriend was to be direct and aggressive, otherwise, he would most likely be seeing someone else by now. All right, she should stop thinking like that. Masumi complained, say, oh that boy, he knows I'll be looking for him. Izuku got up and went to the boy's room, saying, don't worry. I'll go get him. Even though it was cold outside, there was a warmth that could only be produced inside a home when those who cared about one another came together. Izuku and Sei playing console games, Inko and Masumi spoiling Eri, and Toshinori and Yamada having their own conversations, with the former sharing tales from his heroic past. Nejire gave herself a smile. Everyone appeared extremely joyful at the moment. No concerns about the past, present, or future. They were merely in the present. Perhaps Christmas magic did exist. Unaware that someone else had followed her, she had found herself outside, gazing up at the snowy night sky. What are you doing out here? When she heard the familiar voice, she grinned. Izuku was the one who had seen her leave. I was just thinking, how everyone inside looks so happy. No one's worried about what happened, or what's going to come. I've always loved living in the moment, so it's refreshing to see others doing it for a change, she said with an infectious grin. You're right. When you're with the right people, all you can do is just have a good time. That's the beauty of having a family, I think. You sound like some middle-aged dad right now. Izuku pulled her in for a kiss after laughing at the joke, and she kissed him back. For several minutes, they stayed that way, engrossed in each other's warmth. Izuku, Nejire blushed slightly and said, I love you. He grinned slightly and said, it's cute how saying that still makes you red. At his reply, she protested lightly. He shouldn't have teased her in that way. I've said this more times than I can count, and I'll say it again. I love you too, Nejire, and I always will. And look forward to spending more time with you. Nejire grinned broadly. Next Christmas too. He gave a nod. And the next one. And the next one too. All the Christmases, and everything else. We'll celebrate them together. Then Nejire said something unexpected. Even when we have kids. Sure, it'll be way more rowdy, but hey, I'm not complaining. They shared another kiss, and she truly enjoyed the way he picked her up and spun her around. Dude, exclaimed a second voice. The person who made the gagging face was Sei. Nejire said, what are you doing here, Sei? Izuku was taking too long, so I came to get him. It's those damned kids again, he stated. Izuku turned to his girlfriend and became serious right away. Sei opened his mouth after she gave him permission with a smile. Finally, we can go crush those losers. Nejire reprimanded. Hey, at least be grateful. No, he's your boyfriend. You get to spend more time with him anyways. Let's go, Izuku, Sei responded. Nejire averted her gaze and pouted. Izuku chuckled at their exchange. He said, Merry Christmas, Nejire, before he and Sei departed. On second thought, hey, wait up, I'm coming too. Yay, it's finally time. As she practically flew out of her bed and into the air, a very excited Nejire yelled, hunched over, and let out a little groan of discomfort. In other words, she hoped that she wasn't growing older. Unbeknownst to everyone else, Izuku had begun to visit her a few weeks prior. She truly enjoyed their late-night dates, and yes, they did get carried away last night. She was quite sore. As she recalled what had happened, a slight flush came over her face. He must have left recently because her window was slightly open. It was a pretty hot side of Izuku that she had never thought he had. She mentally yelled, Oshu, you perverted thoughts, and returned her enthusiasm to what had initially made her jump. What was causing her such excitement? Her boyfriend would soon become a professional hero and was finally graduating. She wasn't serious. The fact that they would no longer need to conceal their relationship was the true reason she was content. Her quirk acted out when she saw all those girls openly flirting with him or screaming whenever he did something he admittedly cool. She detested it, to put it briefly. Although you wouldn't associate Nejire with such resentment, she did occasionally act impulsively out of spite. She cried out, why haven't they replied me? After her messages to her parents were delivered but unanswered. It only took a few seconds for her phone to buzz before she would lose her temper. They were the ones. Mom. We are preparing. Don't worry, just get together as scheduled. Dad. You got it. I slept in, and you made your mom scream at me. This is what you owe me. Opening square bracket, closing square bracket. Her dad's message made her laugh. It's likely that he played far too many games last night and fainted while holding the controller. This isn't the first time either. She smiled and said, better go get ready then. But then she heard a loud crash and a roar outside. She yelled, what the hell is going on out here? As she watched a group of heroes and a huge villain engage in combat. They had knocked the villain over during the fight, causing him to crash into a building. It managed to enrage Nejire despite the poor people. First and foremost, she would most likely have to cope with this. Secondly, she would also have to cope with the noises of reconstruction, which was unacceptable, particularly when she returned exhausted and seeking quiet. Thirdly, and above all, she wished to avoid being late for Izuku's graduation. Hey, she exclaimed in exasperation. From below, one of the heroes exclaimed, Nejire-chan. We could use some help here. He's been like this for a few hours now. With a sigh, Nejire squeezed the bridge of her nose. You guys should get clear of here, now. They followed her instructions because there was no room for disagreement in the tone of her voice. She charged up a full power blast and flew at the villain. The golden beams of energy spun violently around her fist, then spread out through the villain's body as she made contact, much like Shoto or Endeavor would do with their well-known Flashfire fist. His face was sizzling and sunk in as the force instantly knocked him out. She named one of Izuku's moves after her own. Nejire Smash. The excessive use of force caused the other heroes to perspire. Wouldn't she have been able to afford to tone it down a bit? Fortunately, the villain was eliminated. Thank you for the help. We'll handle it from here. Nejire sulked as she flew back to her apartment after waving at them. The foolish villains had no idea when to take a freaking vacation. She caved his face in, which at least relieved some of the tension. Yes, he would learn not to ruin her day from that. She returned, still wearing her pajamas, and immediately went to the shower to get ready. It was 8:32 on the alarm clock next to her table. Yes, it seemed excessive that she had just over an hour to get ready, but that would be the case for guys who could get ready and ready to go in as little as 5 minutes. She'd like to learn that trick, but she didn't know how they did it. Once more, it was a significant day at UA. As the new generation of heroes, the current third-year class was set to graduate and be released into the world. Students in Class 3A, B, and the general course were prepared for the day. They were clearly going to have a great celebration of this occasion. The guys looked flawless in their stylish suits, and the girls looked amazing in their outfits. A small issue was that Izuku, who was supposed to deliver a speech of goodwill at the event, had not yet shown up. Aizawa let out a sigh. This was something Izuku always did. Perhaps he was observing some of his characteristics as a student. With tiny explosions erupting from his palms, Bakugo snarled, "That nerd better not be late." He had a small eccentricity that he never outgrew. Izuku entered with an apologetic expression as the door opened. "Sorry I'm late. Something urgent came up," the blonde said. "Don't even start. You overslept, didn't you?" as a tick mark appeared on his forehead. Izuku laughed and said, "Okay. You caught me." Despite being extremely noticeable, the dark circles under his eyes somehow made him more attractive. His long hair, which had been his favorite hairstyle lately, was pulled back in a man bun. He wore a dark green tie, a matching shirt, and a black tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He also had that Aizawa look due to his fatigue, which was undoubtedly helping him. "Mioriya, you look sharp," Kirishima said. Mineta yelled in rage, "Yeah. Do you want to ruin this day for us? You'll steal all the girls with that face of yours." The celebration today was bittersweet. They would all set out on their own routes, some close, some far, and some far away. Mineta accepted the offer right away, claiming that the gods of romance were finally shining on him, after receiving it from a rescue hero organization in France. They would definitely miss his antics. The agencies where they had been employed were going to be taken over by others like Tokiyami and Shoto. As anticipated, Bakugo was flying alone and claimed to be able to quickly rise through the hero rankings. Their families and friends were waiting for them on the other side, and they were waiting to be called out. Aizawa attracted their attention by clearing his throat. "First off, congratulations to each and every one of you here. These last 3 years have been, simply put, hell for me." A little chuckle went through him, and he went on with a chuckle in his eyes. "I have seen all of you develop into admirable young heroes, and I and the other teachers taught you everything we know. It is now up to you to put that into practice. However, I did not say it was a terrible hell. I am proud to have taught you, and I look forward to working with you going forward. Work hard, don't slack off and fall behind. I will be closely monitoring your progress. I don't think I should tell you to go out there and prove yourselves because you have already done that. Instead, I will say, go out there and be the best heroes you can be. Sensei, we won't let you down. We'll go plus ultra," Kirishima exclaimed, shedding what he called manly tears. "Then get out of here. They're all waiting on you." He would miss them in the chaos of the class, even though he was proud of them and would never publicly acknowledge it. "Take care, problem children. Where the hell are they? Do they always have to make a show?" Monoma snarled in frustration. "Oh shush, they're here." At last, all of the third-year students had assembled as Class 3A emerged to greet their peers. Nezu approached the podium and started speaking to them. "I'd like to welcome you to this event, where we honor yet another group of young, talented heroes who have persevered and overcome obstacles from both the real world and UA, and who have emerged victorious. Let's start the UA graduation ceremony. It gives me great pleasure to congratulate each and every one of you and thank you for your contributions to society. I am confident that you will leave the world a better place." Nezu's brief speech was met with a round of applause. This was one of the many things that UA didn't waste time on. The students approached one by one to pick up their diplomas. Naturally, some, like Bakugo and Monoma, made a show of it, which caused the audience to erupt in laughter. Izuku approached Nezu, who grinned at him. "You've grown up to be a fine pillar, Izuku. We'll be relying on you a lot more from now on." The boy bowed as he accepted his diploma, saying, "I won't disappoint, sir." After that, he was led to the podium to give his final remarks. In all honesty, he forgot his lines entirely, but it didn't matter. He would express himself honestly. His admirers in the junior classes who had been present cheered loudly, and he winced. Izuku-senpai, we love you. Please don't go. Marry me. For a few moments, he watched awkwardly as the teachers calmed them down, scratching his head. Phew, he let out. We all know what happened and how far we've come since then, so I just want to add my little encouragement to what the principal essentially said. We should all continue to fight for a better world. Even now, rebuilding hasn't been easy, but that's why we should all work together. I also want to congratulate my classmates because we made it through everything. Lastly, I want to thank all of our teachers and the UA staff. Without you, our journey would not have been possible. He left the stage to yet another round of applause. As soon as he was out of sight, he nearly passed out from mental exhaustion, but someone caught his weight. You're lucky you're not heavy, or I'd have let you hit the floor. He sighed and said, thanks for the save, Nejire. That was really exhausting for someone like him, and he thought he would melt under all the lights and eye contact. You're gonna have to get used to it, you know. This is what heroes go through all the time. Izuku let out another sigh. He might be able to retire here and call it a day. Regretfully, that is not feasible. She said, come on you big baby. Let's go. Everyone's waiting for you, after he had taken a short break. The students were occupied outside, either playing around one last time or snapping photos with their friends and family. The boy was not amused by Mineta and Kaminari's final practical joke, which involved writing their initials on the statue of Monoma. You ruined my legacy. Why did they have to be in the fucking eyes? He exclaimed as he pursued them. It was a bit of an exaggeration. That issue could be resolved with Smentos. The couple strolled over to where their loved ones were waiting for them. After blushing a little, Izuku made the decision that it was time to inform everyone and stop juniors from harassing him. He took his girlfriend's hand shyly and slowly. Despite her surprise, Nejire grinned and tightly grasped his, entwining their fingers. It performed as intended. Izuku had been taken off the market. Unaware that her boyfriend had noticed, Nejire gave one of the girls a, suck it bitch, grin and turned away. He questioned, you're quite sadistic aren't you? Nejire laughed. She denied, saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. Was it strange that Nejire had a ridiculous ice cream craving when he woke up? And a very particular taste at that. Her husband was sound asleep, and the only indication that he was awake were his gentle breathing. It would be self-centered to wake him up for a whimsical ice cream craving after he had endured a long day. In addition, there was an abundance of ice cream in the refrigerator, but it wasn't the flavor she preferred. She nearly burst into tears when she saw the electronic clock next to the bed. 2:16 a.m. Given that Izuku was severely injured and had a full day of hero work later that day, there was no way she could wake him up for something as trivial as this. Yes, she should let him rest. She would just be an annoyance. Why, then, she was shaking him awake, but why? Why was she acting completely contrary to her thoughts and defying her logical reasoning? Despite being extremely sleep-deprived, Izuku managed to respond to her in some way. He squinted his eyes as though he couldn't see the person standing next to him and said, huh. Nejire. She looked down at her twiddling hands on her lap and apologized, sorry for waking you up Izue. I want ice cream. He gazed at her as though her words had not fully registered in his mind, which is actually not the case. It didn't take long for his brain to restart. With surprise, he said, ice cream eh? His expression was bewildered as he said, we have tons of ice cream in the fridge. We don't have the flavor I want, Nejire said, nodding in agreement. Taste. Was it time once more? When one of her sporadic cravings suddenly appeared without warning. Though never at this hour of the day, he was fairly accustomed to it. This was novel. What flavor? He inquired, hoping they wouldn't have any problems locating it. She said, salted caramel eh? Izuku knew he had his work cut out for him even before he heard the final line. With pistachio sauce, she concluded. He let out a sigh. It would not be a good idea for him to ask her to wait until daybreak. To start, if she chose to wake him up at this hour of the night, she must have given it some serious thought. He didn't think his wife was very patient. Additionally, he didn't want to see her unhappy because she would be quite upset if she didn't get what she wanted. He gave her a weary smile and sighed once more.
Nejire was aware that waking him up in this manner was immature, but she was powerless to stop herself. Lately, her cravings had become quite common. Even though she didn't think Izuku would understand what to do or how he would achieve her goals, she still woke him up. She was beginning to feel horrible. He said, "Okay, I'll go find you your ice cream," as he rolled off the bed and stood up, clearing his eyes of the sleep-related cobwebs. Her eyes grew a little wider. "You're actually serious?" He gave a nod. He shrugged and said, "Yup. I wouldn't want you all sad because of some ice cream, it's too small a reason." She tried to get off the bed, saying, "Then I'm coming with you," but Izuku gently held her in place. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Where do you think you're going? You're supposed to be resting." Observing that his expression remained unchanged, she responded, "I wanna come with you. If you're gonna go looking for it I might as well go along." Perhaps she could try something else. "I haven't really done much in the last few months. I wanna get some exercise in." Izuku shot her a, "Really? Look. Let her win this time, though." Nejire grinned to herself as she carefully got out of bed with Izuku's assistance. Her belly was nearly 3 times as large as it had been a few months prior, so she did require assistance with some tasks lately. She followed Izuku, who had also put on a sweater, and put on a long, fluffy coat and slippers. Fortunately, there were a number of convenience stores close to where they lived. Izuku assisted her into the car, got inside, turned on the ignition, and headed for his wife's craving and finally, some sleep. Although the first store was open, she couldn't find what she was looking for. Heck, they had completely run out of ice cream. Izuku nearly let out a scream, but he remained composed and made his way to the other one. They didn't have salted caramel either, so he headed to the other one. Another eye twitch. Feeling defeated, he went back to the car and restarted it. "They're also out. I'll check the next one. Don't worry," he assured you. Nejire rubbed her protruding belly and looked down. She felt more and more guilty about forcing him to search for something that he most likely wouldn't find that evening because she could see how hard he was working. Izuku went to inquire when they stopped once more, but he later returned and apologized. She whispered, "Izuku, let's just go home. Sorry for all the trouble." "But your ice cream," was his first line. "It's not important. I was inconsiderate, and I woke you up, even after knowing you had a long day," she said with a sigh. She wiped away her tears and concluded, "All because of some dumb craving and now I've ruined your sleep." To be honest, Izuku found it difficult to adjust to the mood swings that accompanied pregnancy. She would be crying uncontrollably or angry at little to no provocation one minute and fine the next. Respect was all he could say. Find out more. Books. Fanfiction about anime. Devices that read ebooks. A book. Forum. Ebooks of fan fiction. Tools for screenwriting software. Personalized book covers. Community of fan fiction. Fanfiction about video games. He wiped her face and said, "Please don't cry, honey. You know I don't like it." Find out more. Books. Commissions for personalized character art. Platform for fan fiction. Fanfiction about video games. Fanfiction about movies. Books on literary analysis. Writing about experiences at retreats. Writing fan fiction. Clothing with a fanfiction theme. Discussion groups in forums. She appeared more composed than she had just moments before, saying, "Then, let's just go home. I think I'll wait till morning." Izuku chuckled as he gave her a somewhat amused look at how fast she stopped crying. Knowing it was likely at her expense, she pouted at his unexpected amusement. After driving her home and carrying her to her bed, Izuku watched her drift off to sleep. Well, now the real work begins, he told himself, checking to make sure his wife was asleep. Like a light, she was gone. He was going to buy her ice cream, of course, even if it meant searching the streets all night for a store that carried it. He quietly walked out of the house and into the night sky. He moved past where she had given up and deeper into the city. He dropped in front of the doors after finding one. He stopped for a moment to smooth his wind-blown hair. A young man who was about his age, possibly younger, was working the night shift at the register. Izuku entered, greeted everyone, and then went right to work. "Salted caramel?" inquired the man. "With pistachio sauce," Izuku continued, seemingly saying it again. The man shook his head, saying, "No," and his eyes grew wide with disbelief. He half yelled, "Wait, you're Deku," in realization. Then, looking perplexed, he asked, "What are you doing out here at this time of night looking for ice cream?" A little relieved that the man wasn't one of those crazy fans, Izuku sighed. They were the last people he wanted to encounter during this difficult time, not that he didn't love them. He told him everything that had transpired earlier and how he truly needed to find some. Yeah, I know well my waifu, he explained. After giving it some thought, the young man said something that Izuku had not really considered. Why not ask any of your friends? They may know a place you haven't tried. Izuku palmed his face and his eyes grew wide. Why had he not considered that? After saying that, he took out his phone and looked through his contacts. Who ought he to ask? Shoto was a 50-50, Kachin was unquestionably off limits, and he cherished his sleep even more than his hero ranking. After thinking about it for a few minutes, he decided who was probably the best choice out of them all. And he picked up, much to his luck. His voice sounded drowsy, as if he had fallen asleep. Hey, why are you calling at this hour of the day, Midoriya? Has something taken place? Sorry for bothering you, Shinso, but I need your help for Somethinga, Izuku said. Shinso responded with a grunt. Conversely, you might have saved my life. I dozed off while hanging from my capture tape. My eyes are killing me from following some criminals for a long time. Izuku gave a small laugh. Like Aizawa, Shinso enjoyed living on the edge. So do you know where I can find some ice cream? Salted caramel specifically, he said. It makes sense that Shinso took a few moments to respond. Just for ice cream, you called me. Yes, that's Nejire, he clarified. With a sigh, Shinso answered the phone. You mean salted caramel, with pistachio sauce, Izuku continued. That's quite specific. I'm familiar with the location. Izuku let out a sigh of relief, but Shinso interrupted. It's located in Shinjuku. Izuku was thankful even though he could have sobbed right then. Thanks man, I owe you. No issue, Midoriya, I'm glad to assist. Izuku turned to the cashier with a broad smile as the call came to an end. And thank you. Honestly, I don't know how I didn't think of that. The fact that Japan's top hero was complimenting him was too much for the man, who flushed at the praise. He smiled and said, I'm glad I could be of assistance to you. I hope your wife gives birth safely. Izuku gave him a wave before heading outside and using his body to charge one for all before launching himself back into the sky. I'm heading to Shinjuku. Later, the room was dimly lit as the sun's rays entered through the windows. She was startled out of her slumber by the sound of the alarms and reached out to switch them off. Izuku wasn't with Nejire because she never woke up this early and didn't turn off the alarm herself. Wondering where he might be, she opened her eyes and sat up after having that thought. She didn't have to wait long to find out because the individual in question stumbled into the room holding a tub of ice cream and a smaller bottle of pistachio sauce. She covered her mouth in shock as she gasped. She told Izuku to forget it since she was certain she had fallen asleep. Was he really trying to get her ice cream all night? After making sure she received her treat, Izuku collapsed onto the bed and passed out, muttering something about pistachios, his eyes heavy and clouded with sleep. He was obviously not going to work that day.
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.